Hi, is this Paul? Who is this? This is Erica from the dentist's office. I got your number from your file. Pretty sure this violates HIPAA, but shoot your shot, I guess.
I'm not flirting with you. We have you on video stealing thousands of dollars of X-ray equipment.
What's the most embarrassing way you're trying to impress a girl? When I was in 6th grade, my parents talked me into going to a week-long church camp. I knew of, but didn't know personally any of the kids going. But they sold me that everyone would praise Jesus, ride horses, and have a good time. I decided to go. It was like a 6-hour drive in one of those big white vans. Quickly everyone started whipping out their CD cases and exchanging music, and I instantly was like poop. I only had 2 CDs. Britney Spears' Baby One More Time and Everclear. I was a really weird kid. Everyone was trying to talk to me about music and I had honestly never heard of any of the bands they were talking about. I just wanted to jam some Britney to myself. So naturally, I went the elitist route. Said I had all of that music and I was listening to some new underground private poop they hadn't heard of. Once we get to camp, all I'm thinking is let's find some friends quick because I can't talk to these kids anymore. I go to the pool and make some friends with a few older kids. There were 3 girls, 2 guys, and me. They were all in 8th grade, so obviously they were really cool. Plus, I thought the girls were really hot. I figured this would be the best time, if any, to get my first kiss. Their windshield wipers were turned up to the maximum with all the game 6th grade me was spitting. We decide to leave the pool and walk around the camp till we all had to have a group meet up. The cabins were separated by grades, so they said they would walk by the 6th grade cabin and pick me up. First thing I do is put on my freshest outfit. Great time to break out my fresh white t-shirt. Can't forget my jean shorts. This was pre-faded denim, so this was the industrial bright blue jean shorts. It's summer in Texas, so I might as well top the outfit off with knee-high white socks. And, of course, for the ladies, Doc Martens. I looked like a weird redneck lumberjack. So I walk out and they're kind of like, what the F? But whatever. It's kiss time. We start walking and one of the older guys farts and all the girls laugh. Boom. Found my in. My friend Travis and I have been making fart jokes for quite some time, so I'm up to speed on this area of humor. Bam. The other guy farts and all the girls laugh even harder. Got M. Now I'm thinking all I have to do is drop the biggest fart and literally the girls are going to laugh so hard they're going to each kiss me one by one. I start clenching and squeezing my stomach as hard as I can. I'm walking like a newborn deer. Then I feel it. Got a big one ready. So, instead of just dropping it out and laughing, I wanted to make a big show about it. I run in front of the small group, squat down, turn just my head around, and forcefully poop myself. This was all-out diarrhea. If you didn't know this before, early 90s denim was the least forgiving fabric in the world. Everyone knew I poop. It's running down my leg, being soaked up by my knee-high socks. Instantly, I just react and start running, kicking up poop like mud off a truck. I've never been to this camp before, so I'm just running for anything. I find a bathroom, toss the socks, boxers, shirt, but I couldn't drop the jorts. I can't just walk across the church camp naked. Plus at this point I'm thinking maybe they didn't really see it. I was really confident in my speed at the time, so I was thinking I could say that's my thing. I drop giant farts and run before the smell catches me. Come to find out, not only were the 5 people I poop in front of outside the bathroom waiting for me, but there were like 25 kids. Instantly, I just ran in my Docs and jorts combo back to the cabin I was staying in with the other kids chasing me and yelling poop pants. I run to my bed to find all the music nerds I drove up with going through my CD case. It only has the 2 CDs. They are like, what? Thought you had tons of secret music, bro. Wait, did you poop your pants? So yeah, that was about 4 hours into a week-long trip. I really thought farting would impress these girls. I lost my favorite pair of jorts and my pride that day.
How did you make your boyfriend submit to you? I had my first ever pegging session last night and I've never felt closer to my man. My boyfriend has been looking into being a Sigma male, but not the typical kind. Actually, he aims to better and improve himself by looking into stoicism and hitting the gym. Unfortunately, however, he believes he needs to abstain from intimacy. While I'm glad for him, this is terrible for me. I support my boyfriend in every way, I really do, but I have a very high libido. It's been months now of me just using my rubber meat collection to pleasure myself. Eventually, 2 weeks ago I got tired of it. I decided I'd make him want me, so I made an elaborate plan. I made him hot honey chicken tenders with baked mac and cheese, bought him the Spider-Man Pandora necklace, and what he didn't know was my secret weapon. I'd been wearing pheromone perfume that I ordered from Q-Turgis 2 weeks ago. I wore it all throughout dinner and I could tell he was falling more in love with me. I thought attraction in a bottle was a myth, but this man was laughing at my worst jokes and hugging me tighter. Some things happened and we ended up in missionary on the table and he asked me to, and I quote, push my booty button. He grabbed my hand and directed me up to his booty hole and pushed down around his pleasure area with my acrylic nails. Eventually, he moaned hard and told me to stick something inside him and that my finger wasn't enough. I got up from the table and asked if he wanted to try one of my rubber meats. He asked, do you have anything bigger?
My girlfriend put poop in our bathtub and washing machine. My 26-year-old girlfriend moved in with me a few months ago. A bit of the initial romance illusion has shattered since now she just flat out tells me whenever she's sick and gives me details like if she threw up, has a heavy period, and more. But I accept that this is life and that's just information you get if you share space with someone. I am adjusting to it. But she recently did something that I think is more of a hygiene issue. She was driving me to work yesterday, which is pretty close. Maybe a 15-minute drive from our apartment. Halfway there we were on a freeway and she started saying she felt sick and wanted to pull over, but there wasn't really a good place to do it, so she just kept going and asked if she could use the bathroom at my work, and I said sure, that wouldn't be a problem. When we got there she said never mind, she just needed to go home. She looked mad, and when I asked she just kept saying she had to go home, so she did. When I got home I asked how she was feeling and she said she was better. She also told me she had period poops earlier and had a minor accident in the car. First I was just grossed out and told her she's a literal adult and shouldn't have accidents when she can hold it for a few minutes to find a bathroom. I was just shocked because I know sometimes if you have the flu or something accidents can happen, but she isn't sick and periods are something she is all the time, so you'd think she had a handle on them by now. But okay. The real problem was her taking her jeans out of the washer. I asked if they were what she wore in the car and why didn't she just throw them away. She said it was fine because it was just a small dot and she washed them in the bathtub first before the washer. Which is worse. I looked in the bathtub and there were stains and smears of poop and blood. Basically she contaminated the bathtub and washing machine with body waste. I basically said, please wash the inside of the machine and the bathtub with bleach because it grosses me out to think of using them now, and she called me a jerk. We then argued about this for a while. I was raised in a household where we definitely would just throw clothes out if they came in contact with pee, puke, or poop. Those are literal waste products and it's dirty to have particles of it around your living space. What is the most unreasonable request a parent has asked of you as a classroom teacher? Please give my daughter an assignment that will allow her to pass your class and graduate. We have a busy summer planned and she will be unavailable to attend summer school. This was written in response to an email that I sent to a student's mother. For the purpose of this answer, I will call the student Bella. I had tried several times to contact Bella's mother over the school year. She had never replied to any of my emails, unlike her science teacher, whom had similar difficulties, yet communicated with her regularly. Unfortunately, it took sending Bella's mother an email explaining that her daughter was about to fail my class and not graduate, to get her to pay attention. By that time, it was already too late. Bella had attended my class 36 out of 180 days of the school year, hated history, and was usually at least 5 minutes late whenever she did show up. In class, she was disrespectful, disruptive, and never bothered to lift a finger to do any work. Once I asked her why she was absent, and she shrugged her shoulders and turned her head away from me. Her attendance in other classes was similarly poor, but not as poor as mine, which was her final class of the day. Unfortunately for Bella, I was not a pushover when it came to her grade. However, I acquiesced with her mother's wish that I give her work to take home in order to pass the class. I create workbooks for my class, which correspond to different units. This helps me not only differentiate between different abilities, but it offers flexibility for students in case they get sick, and makes it easier for substitutes to follow whenever I am absent. There are 18 units in my class during the school year, and she had yet to complete one. I decided that in order for Bella to pass, she would need to complete 1/3 of the units, which meant that she would need to do 6 of the already available workbooks. I allowed her to choose which ones she wanted to do, and sent her off with the agreement that they would be completed over the weekend, but privately, I expected her to work on them over the week. As anticipated, Bella didn't show up until the final day of class. Along with the workbooks was a handwritten note from her mother explaining that Bella didn't complete everything because she was busy and that she had tried her best. When I checked the workbooks, I found that she didn't bother to try. She had completed 2 of the easier assignments, both of which were located in only one workbook. That summer, I ended up teaching a credit recovery class for history. As suggested, Bella was in attendance. However, unlike the regular school year, most of the curriculum was online, and if you failed to log in more than 2 days in a row, you were locked out and withdrawn from the course. It took less than a week for Bella to be withdrawn from the class. To my knowledge, she never stepped foot in my school again, or recovered the history credits that she needed to graduate. I am assuming that she was failing some of her other classes, and decided to drop out as a consequence. Poor Bella. As easy as it is to blame her for what had happened, it's very clear that her mother should at the very least, receive part of the blame for enabling her behavior. My parents are forcing me to look after my disabled brothers for the rest of my life. I have 3 brothers and they all have schizophrenia. They are also mentally disabled, so they function with the intelligence of a 5-year-old. One has severe autism and OCD. They all believe that the government are watching them, and one believes he's God's chosen warrior. They will never live on their own. We tried that. They destroyed apartments and got arrested and thrown out, and never be able to take care of themselves, so that leaves me. I'm the middle child and the only one born without schizophrenia, OCD, autism, mentally disability. Ever since I was a child I was groomed to take care of them for the rest of my life. Everything I do is for them. I have to go to college and get a good job so I can take care of them. I can never have my own kids because I'm afraid I'm going to pass down all the mental health and disabilities they have. Also, one of them is a serious sociopath with no regard for others. I can't imagine having kids in the house with them. Tonight I had a fight with one of them and they called me a fat pig, and my mom took their side because they're mentally disabled. How does she expect me to take care of them forever if she doesn't make them respect me? He said I did nothing for him and I do everything for him. He just can't remember because he's mentally ill. I just feel like I'll never have my own life. Any future partner I have has to be okay with me having 3 grown disabled men in my house, 2 of which had extreme trouble with the law. Taking care of them is constant. It's at least 60% of what I do. I'm writing this because I feel unappreciated. My mom thinks it's so easy for me to give up my life for them. I got frustrated with her and told her I feel like I'll never be able to have a family and a partner, and she said, "You didn't want one anyway, right?" I feel so alone. I feel like my life has been planned out for me before I was even born. I can't even leave them in the house alone or they'll start fighting each other. I wish I could just be free to choose my life. Or at least I want my family to see this is not an easy decision. My sister also has no mental disorders, but she did the smart thing and moved away. I know I will take care of them for the rest of my life, but I wish my mom could see what I'm giving up. I didn't ask for any of this. It was just thrown on me. Thanks for reading.
My deadbeat brother said that women belong barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen serving their husbands and encouraged my brother-in-law to hit my sister, so we cut him off our lives. My brother is newly divorced. It was sudden and his ex-wife took their 2 kids and flew back to her hometown. After the divorce was finalized, my brother had to pay her a lot of money. I don't know the details as he's kept it under wraps, but my sister and I found it very weird. Anyway, I also have a sister and he has a boyfriend, Jason, who is kindly known. He's often in the media for political reasons. He and his organization are very activist-driven. My parents and brother are super conservative and religious, so when they found out who he was, they didn't like him. My mom had Googled him and the first thing that popped up was him just slamming Christianity and conservatives, so ever since then they've been looking for every excuse in the book to get my sister to break up with him. I love him though. He treats my sister well and she's happy, so I can't complain about him. My parents decided to have a family dinner and invited all of us. Jason is respectful and veers away from political discussions because he knows it's just gonna end in an argument. Well, after the dinner was over, my brother and father were at the table discussing women's rights for some reason while my sister, mom, and Jason were in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner. Somehow my brother was able to get Jason wrapped up in this debate and it turned into a full-blown argument. Jason was trying to remain calm while my brother kept spouting that women belong barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen serving their husbands and family. Jason disagreed and it came to the point where my brother was getting frustrated and blurted out, "Come on, like you don't ever think about hitting Risha occasionally." And Jason replied, "Effing Christ, no wonder you can't keep a wife or your kids around." This ended the family dinner and now my parents are fuming. We went home after. My parents demanded my sister break up with Jason and that he apologize to our brother. However, I've made it very clear I'm on Jason's side and my husband wants to cut contact with my brother. My mother and father have yelled at me about loyalty and how I'm an awful sister and disappointment of a daughter. Update: I decided to reach out to ex-sister-in-law last night. She said that there was a lot of sexual and physical abuse throughout the relationship. My brother signed away his parental rights as long as she didn't out him for the things he had done to her. She admitted she went to my parents a few years ago and they just told her God will lead her through this. Then, my brother has taken to posting on Facebook about how my sister is a gold-digging WHRE and my Jason is a freak of nature sent by Satan himself to ruin his life. Also threatened to send pictures of Jason with our family to news outlets and expose his personal life, and all Jason replied with was, "I already get death threats, so you're just gonna open the door to your family getting those same threats if you do that." To which my brother again posted on Facebook about how God is testing his patience. Jason sent my brother a lengthy text telling him to never come near my sister again and that he was disgusted by how he encouraged him to hit her and all that. My husband also sent him a text saying from here on out he doesn't want my brother near me or our daughter unless he's present because now he worries for our safety. My brother ran to my parents and my parents flew off the handle. They bombarded us with texts and called about how we're shitty sisters and even shittier daughters and now we're all uninvited from the Easter party, lol.
My husband refused to answer my calls while I was in labor, so my brother played a horrible prank saying that I was dead so that he would respond. Now my husband is furious I won't cut him off. So, I don't think this will be something we can come back from. I just don't think I'll be able to heal with him, because there is no way he didn't know it was me calling, and he still hasn't told me why he didn't answer. I know I thought I wouldn't decide right away, but I actually don't want to forget how terrible it was waiting on him, thinking he couldn't possibly leave me like that no matter how angry he was. I took the time to think of that moment before it all went down, and just how grossly betrayed, scared and alone I felt while the contractions were hitting and I was on my knees trying to breathe through the pain while waiting on the phone as it rang though. And I just don't think there's any coming back for that. I wouldn't want my daughter to think it's okay to stay with a man who destroyed her trust that way either. I will be contacting an attorney, and will be meeting with them in the coming weeks. We had a prenup, so it hopefully won't be too hellish. I feel like this situation became even clearer when my friend asked me if I'd still trust him as the one to sign off on my medical papers, and the reaction to that idea was visceral. I wouldn't, and I want him to get off that legality as soon as possible. In fact, there are roommates I had in college who I would trust more. I would have never ignored so many calls from him consecutively unless I had told him expressly that I was unavailable at a specific time, and even then. I feel good with my brother and sister-in-law here with me, especially so with her being a nurse and having been there through the birth. It's really helped us bond in a way that we'd never really had time to. I've also finally told my old friends about the baby, and they are alternating to come and help me out for the next little while. None of this even touched the paternity test, but I'll get it for the proceedings, I guess. So I guess he'll get what he wants. Anyway, I'm safe and well. And my daughter is healthy and happy as a peach and pretty much an angel who is happy to sleep peacefully anywhere and takes to the honker with ease. Which is such a blessing since everything still hurts. Just making this decision has taken an odd weight off my shoulders, and my sister-in-law has been really helping us bond. Edit: I will update in a couple of days when I'm ready to speak to my husband about the future. What is a societal stigma you wish would just go away? I have always been haunted by the societal stigma related to adult content creation. In particular, the belief that it is inferior work, not worthy of respect or recognition. This is a stigma that I have had to face firsthand, as someone who used to produce spicy vids for a living. It all started back when I was in college and struggling to make ends meet. I was buried in student pain, struggling to pay tuition fees and afford my daily expenses. That's when I stumbled upon a job post that offered generous pay for adult content creation. At first, I was hesitant. I had been raised to believe that adult content creation was shameful work, the kind of work that was beneath me. But when my financial situation became critical, I decided to give it a go. To my surprise, it turned out to be one of the most challenging and rewarding jobs I had ever done. Not only did it pay well, but it gave me the opportunity to explore my sexuality and creativity. However, whenever anyone found out about my job, the reactions were often brutal. I remember one particular instance when a professor found out about my job and tried to shame me in front of my entire class. He said I was cheapening myself, and my work had no value. But little did he know that I honed my skills and learned more about media production than any other class in college. The stigma related to adult content creation is deeply rooted in our society. It stems from the belief that people who engage in such work are immoral, and the work itself is degrading. But this could not be any further from the truth. Adult content creation is a legitimate job, and we must stop judging and shaming people who choose to do it. In conclusion, the societal stigma related to adult content creation is a stigma that I wish would just go away. It is time to recognize and celebrate the hard work and creativity that goes into creating spicy vids and other adult content. It is time to put an end to the hypocrisy and embrace the diversity of professions and careers that exist in our society. You made our whole relationship up? Enjoy your dumpster fire life now. I thought I was in a slightly tumultuous but overall fun relationship for a year. I had gotten out of a 12-year relationship when I met Idiot. He was so charming and handsome I thought I won the lottery. He was super pushy about saying I love you first and defining our relationship. He introduced me to his family. His niece started calling me auntie. He tells me about his 3 children and their mothers and lies about how the mother of his oldest hates him and is keeping him away from the kid. But then things started getting weird. His ex started calling all the time, multiple times a day. They had children together, but the grandmother had custody. The lie I was told to make it seem normal was that both of them had jobs where they traveled a lot, so they signed legal guardianship over to the GMA to make schooling an emergency issue easier. Then she moved down to the city we were living in for work training. Then she was moving down permanently without the kids. When I asked why the kids weren't coming, the lie I was told they needed to stay in the same school. They are 6 and 4. I'd say staying with parents is more important at that age than their peer group. It was weird, but I'm the cool girlfriend and it wasn't my place to tell them where their daughters should live. His work was in the smoking industry, kind of. He worked with the ex-brother-in-law going to legal states, buying pounds at a time and trafficking it via USPS. So, when he tells me he's going to Oregon I think nothing of it. After a week in Oregon, a lot of stories aren't adding up, like his phone is always dead even though he carries a power bank with him. Then one of his friends starts posting cuddled up selfies with him. I quickly put 2 and 2 together and dump him for cheating on me with this chick in Oregon. The truth, after I dumped him I made a messy Facebook post on his wall, which the mother of his oldest child sees and she contacts me and lays out the truth. He never contacts his oldest daughter, even though he has her cell phone. No one is keeping him from her. He owes $20,000 in back child support for her, as he has never once made a payment and he moves around a lot and works under the table, so the mother was never able to collect garnishments or anything. He has a huge criminal record starting with rope he committed at age 15, and then a lifetime of fraud, larceny and drug charges I knew nothing about. His ex who moved to our city was his girlfriend of 9 years who was very much still in a relationship with him. They willingly gave up the 2 children because they preferred to use drugs, him, shooting up, her, pills. There is a 4th child? He and the mother conspired to pin the paternity on another poor sap and it's been 17 years now that this other man has been paying for a kid that is not his. I was his side chick. His family knew and played along in the lie and included their 10 and 16-year-old children in the lie. His chick in Oregon is actually his star-crossed lover from childhood. And every time they would try to be together one or the other would end up in jail. The Oregon chick also has a criminal record. Highlights include criminally negligent homicide from a DUI where she unalived her passenger, fraud, larceny, substances charges. This shocked me, so I paid for a criminal background check, which is how I learned of their records. The revenge, I profusely thanked the ex for telling me the truth about the situation. I mulled on it for a bit, trying to convince myself to simply consider myself lucky and just walk away with my dignity intact. But then he'd be winning and I knew I had everything in my power to come down on him like Thor's hammer. I gave the ex all of his info, SSN, state ID #S, current and past known addresses. With this she contacted her state's child support services. He now will have his driver's license revoked and can't get one. No matter the state he moves to until he is current with his past payments. If he ever gets a real job 25% of his wages will be garnished. He now has a warrant for his arrest in the state his oldest kid lives. He's trying to play house with his new girlfriend and contacted the mother of his oldest to arrange a meeting with his kid and his girlfriend's child. The mother is playing nice and pretending it's a go and he is planning a trip to visit the daughter. He will not see her. At the meeting he will be seeing the police and they will arrest him for failure to pay, and he won't get out of jail until he pays a sizable chunk of the $20,000 past due plus bail. I gave the ex his info the day before his federal tax refund was set to go out. She was fast enough at getting his info to CSS that they intercepted his full tax refund and now he has for the first time paid for something for his child. His past due child support is also going on his credit report. I know the name of the business his ex-brother-in-law owns and uses to launder his drug trafficking money. I dropped a dime to the IRS. So, he's losing his only steady income soon and can't get a job at Walmart due to his criminal record, and if he does manage to find someone that hires without criminal background checks he will lose 1/4 of his paycheck. I told this story to 2 of my hacker friends and they got into contact with hackers more talented than themselves and are now going to take care of a few more things for me, like finding the guy who was conned into paying for a kid that's not his. What are some very comforting facts? 1. It's highly likely your pets dream of you in their sleep. 2. People see you about 20% more attractive than you see yourself. 3. Otters hold each other's hands when they sleep so their mate won't drift away. 4. The ozone layer is slowly repairing itself. 5. There's a place in Japan called Capybara Land, where you can hang out with capybaras and see them chilling in hot springs. 6. No one remembers all the stupid shit you did as a teenager. 7. Goldfish can recognize their owners. 8. Bees can inform their friends about good flowers nearby by dancing. 9. Frozen ravens love to play in the snow. One of their favorite activities is rolling down hills. 10. Smiling is actually contagious. 11. Earlier this year scientists made achieving a cure. 12. In Switzerland, it is illegal to own only one guinea pig because they are very social animals. 13. No one is judging you. They are too busy worrying if they themselves are being judged. 14. Bees take naps and 15. Scientists have discovered that rats love playing hide and seek and squeal with joy when finding each other or being found. 16. Sometimes dogs in movies have to have eggy tails because they keep wagging their tails. They are just so happy to be there. 17. Joy music. 18. Tarantulas can eat tiny frogs as pets sometimes. 19. Cheetahs are very shy animal. Some zoos will give them support dogs like those humans. It is the cutest thing ever. 20. Most seahorses are monogamous and mate for life. Young seahorses actually go on dates with their prospective partner before settling and starting. They can also be seen swimming in pairs with their tails linked together. 21. There is a type of mold growing on and around the elephant's foot in Chernobyl. This mold eats radiation, and the radioactivity of the elephant's foot has decreased drastically since the mold started growing there. It's just comforting to me that the planet can heal no matter how bad the scar we left. 22. Zebras rest with their heads on each other's back so they can literally watch their zebra buddy's back. Plus it looks like a zebra hug. 23. Cats will blink when they like you. 24. If 99% of the world finds you unattractive, there are still 78 million people in the world that find you attractive. That's a lot of people. My parents were cheating on each other for years, then got angry at me for finding out. When I was 11 I saw my mom kissing one of her coworkers. Since I didn't know what to do or even who to ask I ended up talking to that coworker. I don't remember exactly what he said, but I know he was really nice to me and advised me to stay quiet so as not to hurt my father. While it made sense to me, I spent around a year feeling bad for my father whenever I saw mom leave for work or stay there late. Then, one of the days mom stayed for the night at the restaurant, my father brought home another woman. It made me have a sort of epiphany. I started thinking that they knew, and after some very productive internet research, I figured they were simply in an open relationship. As I grew older I realized this wasn't the case. The two pieces of crap somehow managed to put two and two together after years and noticed I knew, so they started using me to cheat more efficiently. From around my 15th birthday, they started trying to get me to make excuses for each other, ask one of them to go out for the day when they wanted the house alone, and even arrange meetings with their side pieces. They're both some of the stupidest people I have ever met, but they somehow believe they're geniuses. I think this is what brought them together. They enable each other. But it also meant they were so busy thinking they were cheating gods to realize the other was doing the same. At some point I stopped helping them, but I never said anything. It was such a normal thing that it never even crossed my mind telling them. Last year I started uni and moved away, which meant they had to deal with each other on their own. I figured divorce was coming, didn't expect them to last long without having me around to keep them at peace. I was right, they are going to divorce, and they decided to announce this at a family gathering a couple weeks ago. There was a very funny silence when they said it, and it was broken by them starting to fight and trying to get the other to look bad. My mother was oh so hurt by his cheating, and my father was oh so hurt by hers. I couldn't help but laugh. It was ridiculous. That crap looked like children acting out a telenovela. When I said that yes, I knew, they both had been doing it for more than 7 years, there was silence. I didn't find this one funny. They got so mad at me. Started screaming that I ruined their marriage, that they could have worked it out if they knew sooner, that how could I have done this to them and so on. I left and just went to my apartment. I think they only found out about recent cheating and they might have been mad because out at all those years, plus apparently I've been playing both sides.
My in-laws informed us that they sold their house and want to move into our vacation house rent-free. I think they are planning to make it their retirement home. My husband and I own a beautiful vacation home on the beach that we built ourselves and use throughout the year. My in-laws have always welcomed guests to this vacation house, visiting for a few weeks here and there. They love it and always tell us they wish they could have a beautiful house like it. They stopped by today to give us all the juicy news. They suddenly announced they were selling their house to downsize and move into a tiny condo. They've secretly harbored this idea for months, never mentioning it to me or my husband. They plan to close the sale in 2 weeks and move into our vacation home for 6 months while they figure things out. I was floored. This house is our sanctuary, not a retirement home extension. We use it frequently and have friends and family booked to visit throughout the year. We rely on the income it generates during peak season. Last year, during the peak season, we cleared about $30,000, with about $45,000 for the year's income. This covers many yearly expenses and the entire home mortgage for our family of 5. The goal of this vacation home is to generate enough profit to cover both mortgages eventually and we can get a third rental. Returning to my in-laws, they told my husband they would not pay rent during these 6 months. They even told us we'd be welcome anytime when they stay there as if it's not our place. Every time they're at the vacation home, they've commented on how much they love it and would love to live in a place like this when they retire. So, I feel this was a very intentional move on their part. They will never leave if we let them move in. Aside from that, many people have already paid deposits on the place for the upcoming season, So we'd be out of those, too, and have to pull from our high-yield savings. I told my husband my sentiments. I told him. This was a line I wasn't backing down from, and I refused to compromise our financial future. If that's what he wants, it might be time to figure out how to divide our assets so I'm not entangled in his parents' poop show. My in-laws, sensing my resistance, are now guilt-tripping us, claiming they have nowhere else to go. Because I was so confused about what to do, I left the house and went to a nearby coffee shop to cool down. After a few hours, I returned home with the conviction of not letting them stay in our vacation home. Fortunately, my in-laws were gone when I got home. My husband told me the details of how their conversation went. He does not want to let them into the house long-term, especially after I voiced some serious concerns. He told them they couldn't live there as it was already rented out consistently through October. His mom, of course, sobbed and wailed about her son abandoning her in her time of need. Along with other manipulations, he should care for them in their old age as the eldest child. I'm so glad I wasn't there for that because I would have lost my mind. He told them he'd go condo hunting with them this weekend and see if he could help them find a place. He used our credit card points to book them in a hotel for 2 weeks and told them they had to have a place by then. This is about 4.5 weeks out as their house hasn't closed yet. He asked to see the closing documents on their home from their realtor so he'd have a better sense of what they are looking for as far as a condo price-wise, and they refused to show him. He got pissed and asked them to leave. I'm glad he's not blind to their crap.
F with my family, I'll paralyze you. 2 years ago, my sister started an embroidery business, and it was doing so well that she would often stay past midnight to fill people's orders. At the same time, my cousin's new wife got jealous of her and she started spreading rumors about my sister sleeping with her husband. I couldn't stand it at first because he's not doing anything about it, but it's women's stuff so it stays between women. A few months after the rumors started, my whole family was invited to my other cousin's graduation party. My sister and mother attended the party, but I did not, as I had some important stuff to do. A couple of hours later I get a call from my mother telling me to come pick her up ASAP. I drove there thinking it was her glucose or blood pressure, but as soon as I got there I saw something terrifying. That cousin was standing over my mother, punching her in the face. The only thing I remember is how they could not separate me from him and how I kept hitting his lower half with a rock. The next day we were both rushed to the hospital. I had 47 seconds degree muscle tears that required rehabilitation and he lost the ability to walk. People who've discovered a secret about their family, what's your most shocking I can't believe it's true revelation? Growing up, I always knew that my family was a little different. We lived in a small town, and my parents owned a local antique shop. They were always bringing home strange and interesting items, and our house was filled with curiosities from different eras. One day, when I was about 16, I was rummaging through the attic, looking for some old family photos for a school project. I came across an old, dusty trunk that I had never seen before. Intrigued, I opened it. Inside the trunk, I found a collection of old newspapers, photographs, and documents. As I started going through them, I realized that they were all related to a famous bank robbery that had happened in our town in the 1930s. The robbers had never been caught, and the stolen money had never been recovered. Among the documents was a handwritten letter, dated a few days after the robbery. It was written by my great-grandfather, and it was addressed to my great-grandmother. In the letter, he confessed to being one of the robbers. He wrote that he had hidden the stolen money and planned to use it to provide a better life for their family. I was stunned. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My great-grandfather, a bank robber? It was a shocking revelation, a secret that had been hidden in our family for generations. I confronted my parents about it, and they were as shocked as I was. They had no idea about our family's dark past. We decided to turn the letter and the other documents over to the local historical society. The discovery of my great-grandfather's secret changed the way I looked at my family.
What strange events have gotten swept under the rug like they didn't even happen? The leader of Scientology's wife vanished after an argument in 2005. Nobody knows what happened to her. T.I., rapper, and his wife have serially DNR'd over 30 victims, according to 30-plus allegations. If you Google T.I. it doesn't even come up unless you specifically search for it. $128 billion went missing in my country. It is talked about for about 3 months here at it. It's Turkey. Random scary clowns in like 2016? Beyoncé sang at a private concert for the Gaddafi family in 2008. The only reason why I know this is because it was a footnote in a sociology book about the power dynamics in government-neglected region.
Have you as a police officer ever tightened the handcuffs a bit too much out of anger? Yes, a few times. Once when I was working in the major crime unit, I arrested a 34-year-old guy for rape and assault. His victim was a 13-year-old girl. He broke almost every bone in her face. We knew who we were looking for right away. The young girl was able to ID him, but it took us a few days to find him. The whole time I was getting more pissed off thinking what he did to her, plus I have a daughter that was about the same age. When we finally got him, he did put up a fight, which I was praying he would do. The great thing was there was a patrol officer with us that was wearing a body cam, so we had proof he was fighting. Otherwise we would have been looking at abusing a prisoner. After we had him on the ground, he would not stop whining how we were hurting him. Then I put the cuffs on him and he was screaming how tight they were. I told him I would loosen them for him, but by accident I made them a little tighter. My bad. It's always the ones that hurt others that cry when we get them or scream about their rights. My wife's family walks around the house exposed, and I'm going crazy. A bit of backstory: I've been happily married to my wonderful wife for 5 years. In total, we've shared our lives together for 7 incredible years. She's from the beautiful country of France, known for its rich culture, scenic views, and, as I recently found out, very different perspectives on personal freedom and body confidence. Currently though, we're based in the US. One of the blessings of our jobs is that they're remote, meaning we can work from almost anywhere in the world. It's because of this flexibility that we decided to spend 5 weeks in France, staying with her family. We've completed 1 week, and it's been, for the most part, a good experience. The family home consists of my wife, her lovely mother, and her younger sister. I should also mention, her father isn't in the picture for reasons I won't dive into. I truly adore them both. They've been extremely welcoming, treating me like one of their own, which warms my heart. But there's this one cultural difference that's making me feel very, well, out of my depth. Let me explain. In the US, we're generally a bit more conservative when it comes to being exposed within a family setting. However, in my wife's family home, there's a very relaxed attitude towards it. To put it simply, they're comfortable with being topless or even completely exposed at times, especially after taking a shower. Their usual attire at home is also very free-flowing, which doesn't leave much to the imagination. They often joke about how I react, showing how Americans and the French see things differently. And I get it, 2 different worlds, 2 different perspectives. But here's where I'm struggling. My wife is breathtakingly beautiful. And, as it turns out, good looks seem to be a family trait. Her sister could be her doppelganger, and their mom? Think of her as a mature, equally stunning version of my wife. Adding to the complexity, due to how the rooms are arranged in the house, my wife and I haven't been able to get it on, if you know what I mean. And it seems this might be the situation for the rest of our stay. As the days go by, my feelings of physical attraction, not just towards my wife but due to the overall environment, are becoming stronger and harder to control. I'm in a tough spot. Talking to my wife about how I feel doesn't seem fair. I mean, I'm staying in their house. I want to respect how they do things and I don't want them to change because of me. But if I said I wasn't feeling a lot of things with this new situation, I wouldn't be honest. I called out my mom for being suspicious. My wedding is coming up, and my mom has been campaigning hard for her husband, my stepdad, to be the person to walk me down the aisle. I already asked my paternal grandparents. My mom knew I was going to ask them and knew when I had. But she has not given up on the desire for me to ask her husband. The other day, she told me that it would make the most sense, and she felt like he was the correct and most worthy person to walk me down the aisle. I called her out on that and said she should be more honest about why she wants him. The reason I know is because she knows her husband and my dad hated each other, and she believes I should have been loyal to her husband over my dad. She especially believes I should have given all the loyalty I had to my dad to her husband after I lost my dad at the age of 7. VG, my parents broke up, never married, and my mom got married to her husband when I was 2. My dad and her husband hated each other. I was always aware of the fact. But it became especially bitter for me when I was 6, and my dad was diagnosed with cancer. I don't remember a lot from that time. But I do remember my mom's husband showing up to see my dad when he was in the hospital, and I remember him yelling at my dad. I know prior to that, the two were as bad as each other, and the animosity was mutual. When my dad died, I didn't automatically start to care more or feel closer to her husband. He did try, and I think part of his hatred for my dad was I was such a daddy's girl and never looked at him being in my life as having two. I spent equal time with both my parents when dad was alive. I never got closer to my mom's husband. He was my mom's husband and my half-sibling dad, but even though I don't remember a time when I didn't know him, I never saw him as my dad. He always hated my dad, too. I heard him grumble about him over the years. Even saw him spit near a photo of my dad once. Eventually, he gave up trying and decided I wasn't worth his time, which I felt was better for everyone. But my mom hates it. She hates that he's just her husband, and I haven't embraced him as my dad. One time, she said it can be so hurtful to lose to a dead man and be rejected in favor of a dead man. I asked what she meant by that, and she told me I never picked her husband over my dad, and I never let him feel like he won against him in one thing. I told her he was still alive while my dad was gone. I think my mom still wants that win for her husband, especially when his hatred for my dad still burns strong. I believe my paternal grandparents are the right people to walk me. I have been close to them my entire life. My mom is mad that I called her out and tried to make her be honest. She said she was not lying and I was being rude. Am I the a-hole?
I'm a teacher and I think one of my students isn't alive. I'm a math teacher in a small-town high school. Among my students, there was one unusual boy named Tommy. He was quiet, never spoke, and didn't mingle with other students. Yet, he always scored perfect in all tests. One day, out of curiosity, I tried to engage Tommy in a chat. But he quickly walked away without saying a word. He had a certain coldness about him, which was quite off-putting. I decided to get in touch with his parents. However, the school records had no contact information for them. I found it strange but shrugged it off as a clerical error. Cryptic aura around Tommy piqued my curiosity. I tried asking around town about him. Everyone's answer was surprisingly the same: no one knew him or his family. One day, at a local diner, old Martha, an aging, long-time resident known for her sharp memory, overheard me talking about Tommy. She beckoned me over, a worried expression on her face. She claimed that there was a Tommy fitting my description who used to live in town, but he had died in a car crash 15 years ago. My blood ran cold, everything around me began to spin. Was it possible that my student was a ghost? I returned to school the next day with a lump of fear in my throat. I kept my distance from Tommy, who appeared normal as ever, acing his math test. Somehow, this normalcy sent shivers down my spine. I started digging through the old school records, which were in a chaotic state. After days of searching, I found what I was looking for, a yearbook from 15 years ago. There was Tommy, looking identical. The caption under his picture read, "In loving memory of Tommy, who left us too soon." I was scared but decided to confront Tommy. After the class, I asked him to stay back. He didn't move or speak. He was just there, standing, looking at me with blank eyes. I asked if he had died 15 years ago. Tommy smiled a sad, chilling smile and said, "Yes, but I had never been good at math. I wanted to learn it properly." Frightened and speechless, I saw him walk out of the room, disappearing into the crowd of students in the hallway. He never came to my class after that day. I told my story to a few colleagues. Some thought I was joking, others believed I was hallucinating. But old Martha believed me. We decided to hold a small memorial for Tommy by the tree in the school grounds. It was our way of telling him it was okay to move on. Since then, I've never encountered anything supernatural. But Tommy's incident etched a lasting impression on me. In silent nights, when I'm all alone, grading papers, I can still feel a cold breeze and see a faint reflection of a boy smiling at me from the empty desks. The experience was a grim reminder. Not all our students carry the weight of their backpacks, some of them carry the weight of their souls, caught between worlds, unready for the adventure ahead.
I've been reverse pickpocketing my parents for years, and I think I'm addicted to it. When I was younger, I noticed how excited my mother would get over finding money on the ground or in the wash, even if it was only $1. Once I was a bit older and had a job, I realized that I had money I could spend however I wanted. My parents didn't really like receiving random gifts when it wasn't a holiday or birthday, so I started sneaking ones and fives into their wallets, bags, and even coat pockets. It made me so happy to see how excited my mom would get even though it wasn't much money, and sometimes my dad would bring home candy with the surprise extra money. I'm an adult now and still live with my parents. They let me live with them super cheap even though money has been a little tight the last few years. They don't like it when I just give them money to help, even if they pay me back. I started reverse pickpocketing in my teens and 20s. My mom gets especially excited and tells me all about the money she found. My dad doesn't vocalize that he found it, he just brings home ice cream or fast food for the family. The problem is, I can't stop. It's not putting me at a detriment because they don't charge much for rent, but I'm worried I'll get caught soon. I'll probably stop once our financial situation is a bit better in a year or so. I just absolutely love the smile it brings to my mother's face, and the smile my dad has when he surprises us with a special treat. It's worth $20 to $30 every paycheck. I don't do it too often, but it's been going on for so long I think I'm addicted to it. My stepmom gave away my PS4 while I was away in college, so I rented out her house while she was on her honeymoon. I'm an only son. My mom died of ovarian cancer at only 55 5 years ago. It broke my dad's heart. They had been together since college and were the same age, with my dad being a month older. I'm 22, and am about to graduate college with my degree in chemistry when the main events start to occur. I went to college on a full-ride scholarship. This is important later. My dad met my now stepmom when she was my mom's nurse at the hospital where she spent her final days. My stepmom Grace played all the right notes to gain my dad's trust. She was empathetic to him, nurturing, comforting after my mom passed. I was 17 and old enough to sense that she was just trying to weasel her way into getting my dad's resources, but it was up to my dad if he wanted to be in a relationship with her. I was in my final year of public school and had just won a scholarship to attend college out of the country the following year. My dad mourned my mom for a year, and that whole time Grace would check in on him by phone every month or so, in my opinion to scope out the possibility of sinking her hooks in him. After a year passed, Grace took the gloves off and went hard after my dad. Grace was only 40 when she and my dad started seeing each other. I didn't like her, but at the same time my dad at least didn't seem so depressed anymore, so I tried to be less pessimistic about her and give her the benefit of the doubt. In my gut I didn't trust her, though. But we are Scandinavian, and at least in my family the son does not tell his father what to do or even offer any opinion. Grace is from the Czech Republic if you're wondering. My father was a very successful banker during his career, and amassed quite a portfolio of wealth. I'll spare you the details, but after 6 months of dating, Grace and my father are married. My dad never really got over my mom though, and he was getting weaker and weaker even though he was only 57. Since his health was fading he called me to him and asked me point blank, "Boy, what do you need to set you up in this life?" I told him I don't need anything, I'm a man and can take care of myself. But what are you even talking about, Dad? You're going to be around for decades yet. I did remind him that he had living sisters with children, my aunts and cousins. I also reminded him that I had a full scholarship to college, so don't worry about giving me any cash. He was dead only a year later at 59. I of course have seen lots of Hollywood movies, so I consider the conspiracy theory that maybe my dad's nurse wife poisoned him and made him sign over all his money to her, but I really honestly do not think that's what happened. Other relatives didn't like Grace either, but they knew my dad was totally in love with my mom and that her death utterly broke him. Well, long story short, my dad bequeathed his 5-bedroom house to me even though I wasn't expecting it and didn't ask for it. He gave a small endowment to each of his sisters and their children. He left about 80% of all his existing money to Grace, which amounted to several hundreds of thousands of dollars. My dad ignored me because he's generous to a fault and still gave me several tens of thousands of dollars, which were of course very useful to me. Grace tried to put on a friendly front, but I could tell she was angry as hell that she didn't get my dad's house, too. That belonged to me, and I had the legal papers to prove it. She was especially mad because we live in an extremely upscale and trendy location, and houses are hard to come by and easily sold for massive profit. During the first few months after my dad's death, I had the nauseating, creepy experience of knowing that Grace was trying to feel me out to see if I might be into a little relationship with her. Gross. She still stayed at the house though because over the last 3 years she had gotten used to living there and acting like she owned it. And, even though I officially owned it, I was always away at college and only visited my dad's old house once every couple of months, and even then it wasn't to see Grace, but to see my cousins who lived just a few miles away. I downplayed the fact that it was really my house, and over the months I think Grace gradually forgot that she really had no legal right to the house. She probably believed that sooner or later, because I never asked her for any of the hundreds of thousands of my dad's dollars that she now had, that I was somehow independently wealthy and would just give up my house to her. I knew I'd eventually hydrogen bomb this beach when she started dating some new guy only 5 months after my dad was in the ground, and one time when I came home from college after graduating, she and her new boyfriend, some sleazy looking D-bag named Ivan who was only a few years older than me, were acting like I was a guest in my own house and that they owned it. I played along. Grace told me she gave away my PlayStation 4 to Ivan's cousin because I'm too old to play with video games. I don't even know this mother effer and you give him my PS4 to give away to some other poop who I also don't know? I quickly changed all my network passwords that same day. I smiled, but I knew what I had to do eventually. She also said that she and Ivan were getting married because I just can't mourn your father forever. I have to move on with life. I tell her that I graduated college and already secured employment with a local firm, and will soon find a new place to live. She looks thrilled. Especially the part where it looks like I'll soon have a new place to live. Then in a patronizing way she tells me, "You always have a place in our house though, you are welcome to stay whenever you please." Thanks, Grace, really generous of you. What I really say is that I will probably have a new place in 3 months. She says that is wonderful because she intends to go to her homeland to have a wedding with Ivan and afterward have her honeymoon. She assures me it's a local affair, otherwise I'd invite you, honey. And anyway, I know you're so busy. I congratulate her. She asks me if I can watch the house for her. Watch my own house? Sure. What I really say is of course I will take care of the house. I am careful to not say your house. She and her D-bag fiancé, who I am 100% sure is only there for Grace's money, go on their trip and I immediately put out advertisements in rental websites offering to lease my house. I hire movers and have all of Grace's furniture and possessions boxed up and put into a storage rental facility. I retain all of my parents' furniture that they had before my dad met Grace. Locks? Changed. All of them. Within days, I am inundated with dozens of inquiries regarding my amazing, furnished house with fantastic views. I rent it to a wonderful young family. A barrister and a school teacher wife and their 2 preteen children. They pay me their first and last month's rent, and sign a lease for a year. I warn them about my crazy stepmom who thinks this is her house, but I present them with contact information to my lawyer, the same lawyer my dad retained, in case they need any assurance that I'm on the level. I also give my lawyer the information about the storage facility, including the fact that I generously paid 4 months of storage in advance, which is a whole month longer than Grace's Czech honeymoon adventure. I then found a great apartment in the city near my new place of work. There I met a woman in a restaurant I frequent at night after a long workday. We have been dating 6 months now and are engaged to be married. Grace of course tried to shriek and cause trouble when she realized she got kicked out of my house, but my lawyer quickly shut her mouth without my having to ever speak to her garbage face again. From what I hear, her and her trash husband left the country and I assume they're blowing through my dad's money and will soon be broke like chavs usually become when they taste a little bit of what they think is the good life. So maybe Grace will go and try to exploit some other lonely man into giving her his money. Speaking of money, the house that I rent out is generating so much money that I not only am able to help pay for my cousin's college, but I moved into a larger apartment of my own, together with my fiancé. I love my job, but really, I could survive solely on renting my dad's old house. And to think, if Grace had only been cooler and nicer I might have let her stay at the house, just to be a good sport. And definitely if she stayed the hell out of my room. But no, she had to act all proprietary, so I had to make her homeless as a wedding gift. My religious wife wants to divorce me. I made my investigation and I divorced her first. Now she's alone and broke. We have been married for 2 years now. I make sure she's as happy as she can be. We have everything right now, a house, a car, food, a job. Yesterday she woke me up, she was crying. She told me that she felt bad for not telling me before, but before we were even dating, she was dating someone else and broke up with him because they had sex. She now feels unworthy to be my wife, because she told me she never had relations with anyone else. I told her I didn't think that should change anything about how I feel towards her, that's something that happened in the past, and we can't do anything to change it. But she just continued crying. She just started saying that I've been very supportive of her all this time, but she can't live knowing that she lied to me for 2 years, and started talking about divorce. I just don't know what to do now. I love her. I know she loves me. This is just painful. She is very religious and has experienced some depression crises before. Additionally, I've known her for a long time. I find it hard to believe that she wants a divorce solely because of what she did in the past. My gut tells me that there might be more to the story. Considering the divorce, I understand that she may be cheating. I have access to all of her accounts, so I can investigate further. I made my own investigation, and as a good engineer, I hacked my way into all her messages from different services on her phone. What I found just broke me entirely. She was essing and sending pictures to this other guy, who lives more than 200 miles away, and I found out that one day they saw each other while I was on a business trip. I collected all the evidence, prepared divorce papers, and showed all to get at once. On the good side, we don't have kids, and when we got married, we accepted that all our goods were owned by the one who bought them. So I kept everything and now she's alone and broke. But I can't help but feel just like, empty inside. I'm gonna work this out, I deserve to be happy. Today I effed up by giving my dog unintentionally the best damn day of his life. I thought others would appreciate how much I'm laughing, but how many horrible regrets I have over this situation. Let me start by saying it's important to note that whenever I cook hot dogs, I slice the package, take out a few, roll the rest back up in the plastic packaging, and fasten it all with some good old-fashioned elastic bands. Today, I did not. I couldn't tell you why my dumb self decided to just fold the plastic over a few times and place it back on the shelf, but here we are. So my spouse comes running down in their few minutes between endless meetings to make their lunch quickly. We are the only two in our house, plus our little rescue dog who is a stray and an absolute mooch. I mean, this dog will weave between your feet, eyes glued to the floor hoping for even a single speck of crumb because woe is him, he's never been fed a day in his life. So we're all in the kitchen, I hear the fridge open, and it suddenly dawns on me in horror that my spouse is most definitely going to go for those hot dogs I wrapped like a moron. I quickly turn around to say something, and my spouse in slow motion, wide-eyed stares at me as the hot dog package unrolls like a fruit by the foot commercial and douses my dog's entire skull in too much to be reasonable in one flipping package of hot dog water. My dog lost it. Like a Christian grandma with the second coming of Christ, my dog just sprints across the entire apartment with the worst case of the zoomies I think we've ever seen him have. He proceeds to spend the next 15 minutes singing our praises as the greatest humans alive as he rolls across every piece of furniture we own. I'm talking every piece of furniture. Now I don't hate hot dogs, but the smell is weirdly overpowering, and every time I sit down on something all I can smell is godforsaken hot dogs. My dog loves it though. And now I'm figuring out how to shampoo out hot dog water for my life. I have so many regrets. My husband let his best friend who just got out of jail move into our basement. We have kids and he gives me creep vibes. What should I do? He has nowhere to go. Let me tell you my story, then you decide. I was a single dad with my 4-year-old daughter, living a happy life. A buddy of mine who I grew up with, from 1st to 8th grade, called me from Dallas and said he was coming for a visit. I was really glad to hear it. We drank and shared stories till the wee hours and went to bed. I got up early the next morning and was making coffee, when my daughter came in and told me he had crawled into bed with her and was touching her. She was 4, I knew she was not making this up, and her little friend who stayed the night said the same thing. He was still in bed at this time. I became so angry, I began to shake and saw red. It was a feeling that I don't want to feel again. He finally came into the kitchen all smiling and such. The only thing I could do, and just barely was able to do, was tell him, don't say a word, run out the front door this instant as fast as you can. I can only hold myself back for the next minute or two. Then I will cut your throat. I called the cops, told the story, and they found and arrested him. The United Way sent a child counselor to my house, and worked with my daughter many times as we were going to court to prosecute. Luckily for my daughter, he pleaded guilty, got 5 years, and is labeled an intimacy offender. I was very, very lucky I held control, otherwise I would have went to jail for murder and left my daughter alone. That's my story. Do you want one of your own? Do you want the chance of a story of your own? I trusted this guy, he was a childhood friend, never would I have believed he was capable of it. But it's your kid, you make the decision. How did bad parenting contribute to my unhealthy relationship with food? Growing up, my parents were hardly ever around due to their work at the home water station. It was frustrating because, truthfully, they could have been more present if they wanted to be. Unfortunately, they weren't the best role models when it came to healthy eating habits. While I made an effort to eat vegetables, my mom seemed convinced that I didn't. On the other hand, my dad allowed me to eat whatever I wanted as long as I didn't overindulge. However, if there was any leftover food on my plate, my mom would insist that I finish it all. My mom had a habit of consuming candies, cola, and smoking every day, until her body couldn't handle the damage anymore and she suffered a stroke. After that, she stopped those habits and suddenly considered herself a health enthusiast. Yet, she still believed that I didn't eat vegetables, despite evidence to the contrary. Strangely, all my closest friends would never think of me as a picky eater. During this time, I also battled with depression. It was a tumultuous journey of uncontrollable emotions, countless aside notes and letters I wrote, self-inflicted pain, and a tendency to overeat, especially when my mom made hurtful comments. She never acknowledged my mental health struggles and had no real interest in me other than seeing me as a retirement plan to eventually extract money from. My relationship with food became monstrous. I would consume enough food for 3 people in a single meal, not stopping until I was on the verge of vomiting. Consequently, I became overweight, bordering on obesity. Once I reached college, my sister encouraged me to seek professional help. I had the financial means to treat my PCOS and subsequently lost some weight. However, things took a turn when my partner left for an 8-month job training as a seaman. I felt incredibly lonely during that time. My sister had moved to a different country to distance herself from our mom, and now my partner was absent for 8 months. I struggled to cope with my already dwindling sanity while being alone in my parents' house. My relationship with food shifted dramatically. From voraciously eating, I began vomiting after every meal. Food became repulsive, and I no longer had the desire to eat. I only ate to quell the hunger pangs. When my partner finally returned, we decided to move in together. Unfortunately, my health had already been significantly impacted. Alongside my struggles, I also developed a genetic predisposition to diabetes, as it runs in my family on my mom's side. Nevertheless, I am currently in a better position to manage my meals, exercise, and improve my overall health. Food is no longer an escape, nor does it feel scarce or repulsive. It is simply sustenance. It no longer has the power to take me away from my problems. I can still enjoy whatever I want to eat, whenever I want, and it is not my enemy. Relearning and unlearning the detrimental behaviors and beliefs surrounding food has been a challenging process. Yet, I am gradually working towards a healthier relationship with food and leaving behind the toxic habits I acquired over time. Unhinged neighbor wants a copy of my grandmother's will. Now, he requests for heirlooms because his kids are my grandma's family. When my grandmother was diagnosed with cancer, she opted for no treatment. She had watched her husband go through chemo, radiation and surgery, and he was miserable the whole time. She didn't want that for herself, and we supported her. Knowing that she might pass soon, over the next year, she gifted items to family and friends, told us to write our names on the things we want and take what we wanted. There were conditions. There are things that you can't take, like family heirlooms, because she says that it will either be for my aunt or for my dad. We all knew what those items were and who they were going to, so that was easily settled after she died. The house was inherited by my father, who very suddenly and unexpectedly passed away 2 weeks later. I inherited the house at that point. Anyway, the next door neighbor, we'll call him Todd, came over several times, upset that he and his kids over 18 weren't invited to Grandma's funeral and weren't presented with a copy of the will. He said that he knew Grandma loved his kids like her own, and it would be impossible that she did not leave anything behind for his kids. Todd brought up the subject 3 times, all within about 2 weeks. The first 2 times were eyebrow-raising hints where I walked away not really sure if I was interpreting his words correctly. This particular incident was the end of it. He went to the house again and wanted to know if I would allow his kids to go through the house to see if there was anything they'd like to take to remember her by. My grandma died 4 weeks ago and my dad died 2 weeks ago. I thought he was awfully rude, but I offered to let them go through the boxes I had packed that I was planning to donate, and he was offended. I mean, mortified. He said his daughter and son had their hearts set on some items that were family heirlooms, and I literally laughed at him. He said her daughter likes to take my grandma's jewelry set and piano. His son would like to have my grandma's coin collection and a painting she acquired from a bidding years ago. I explained they were family heirlooms and would be staying with me, and 2 of the items had already gone home with my brother. He said, my kids were her family and she would have gifted those to them. They should have been included along with everyone else when everything was divided up. Keep in mind that none of us knew this guy or his kids other than the neighbors next door. They were never at any family gatherings that were held at my grandma's house, and the only time I ever heard her talk about them was when she was complaining about them. Especially when she caught them using both her hoses to fill up their pool and then came over complaining because she had put locks on the outdoor faucets. Luckily, Todd's house was in foreclosure and he moved away about a year later. I proposed to my girlfriend but met someone who made me question my decision. My girlfriend and I have been together for the past 5 years, and I proposed a few months ago. The foundation of our relationship was spent in lockdown through the pandemic, in a country where the COVID protocols were borderline abusive. So we got to live with each other, and we created a strong bond. We talked a lot about our future, however uncertain it was back then, and for a good reason. We both work in the same industry. We're very good at what we do. Honestly, we are a perfect couple, and I could not be happier. So I thought. A big part of our dream was to open our restaurant. And we did this year, and it's doing relatively well. The company is owned by us. We are very deep into each other's lives, and my proposal was something we knew was always coming, as we lived our lives like we were already married. Fast forward to a few months. We had a woman at the age of 30 make an appointment at our place. When we recognized each other and were very surprised. We were high school lovers, but haven't seen each other since. We greeted her and I introduced her to my fiancé. After she enjoyed her food, she came up to me and we had a little chat, and eventually, she left. Later that evening she messaged me, said it was great to see me and would be lovely to catch up sometime. I said I'd love to think we were going to have a friendly dinner, but I was wrong. We made it happen a week later. We went to a fancy restaurant together and she talked about herself, especially how she is single and happy. After dinner, we went to play tennis like we did in our high school days. We both share a passion for tennis, but unlike her, my fiancé hates tennis. We started hanging out even more, and on the days we didn't play tennis I found myself thinking about her. She graduated from Harvard and is financially stable. Our values seem to align. The fact that she enjoys tennis as much as I do turned me on a little too much about her. For the last couple of weeks, I've been obsessing. Thought maybe it was just a crush, but I caught myself fantasizing about things I shouldn't be fantasizing about. Not even intimate, just thinking about scenarios in which I met her sooner. About being with her. What it would be like dating her. Maybe she was the one. I'm thinking about scenarios in which I throw everything I have with my fiancé away just to try to be with this girl. My passion for her grew at a rapid rate and something had to be done. I couldn't leave my fiancé, but I needed a reason to. I tried setting my fiancé up where I would be able to walk out of her life and it would be her fault. I tried setting her up with other guys, but it was a total fail. The only option I had was to make her fall out of love with me. I started to be lazy, messy, and an absolute jerk to her. Internally I felt like a moron, but it had to be done. In a few weeks, my fiancée told me that she was having second thoughts and needed a week or two break from the relationship. My plan had worked. During our so-called break, I got very close to my new love. Midway through the break I told her that I wasn't looking for a relationship where I'd have to take breaks and made that my reason to break up. She called me an immature child for breaking up for a stupid reason like that, but what was done had to be done. She remained my business partner, which was not ideal, but we couldn't sell the restaurant. I was happy with what I had accomplished and was finally ready to go out with my new girlfriend. Everything was perfect, but the time we tried to have intimacy, I found out she was a transgender with a PP. What was the reason for why one of your teachers had a breakdown during class? This one cool guy named Davey tormented our English teacher for no reason. She was very sweet and passionate about her job, but this guy was a dirtbag. He would write things on the board before class really small and random spots like witch, pig and just other random insults. He would make fun of her deceased husband this way too, as well as the fact her puppy had recently died. The one day that caused the breakdown was when he stole the remote for the wall-mounted TV. Her class was the time period that had the daily announcements, so the TV was heavily used. So she searched for the remote, couldn't find it and had to stand on her tiptoes to control the TV from the button on the front. A little bit through the announcements the TV turns off. Everyone's reaction was weird, so teacher got back up to turn the TV on again. A minute or so later went off again. Of course at that point it starts getting suspicious and she jokes, "Okay, is someone playing a prank on me?" No one says anything because no one knew Davey had the remote. He repeats turning it off 2 more times directly after she turned it back on and she snapped. "Okay, who has the remote, who is doing this?" And being immature 9th graders we all start snickering cause that is funny. After no one fessed up she starts unloading about how she'd been having a tough time lately and starts spewing out all this information about her personal life, just ranting away. This woman was going through it, I started feeling really bad. And during the middle of her rant Davey turns the TV on and starts flipping through the channels. The teacher lets out an animalistic yell and burst into tears. Cue entire class with shocked Pikachu face. She throws the classroom door open and runs out. She was gone for like 20 minutes and returns with the jock teacher. Literal hard as steel drill sergeant. He was calmly talking to us how what we were doing as a class was bad to her and the perp needs to step forward, and Davey had the nerds to turn the TV off and on while he was speaking. Dead silence. You could have heard dust falling on the ground and everyone was like, "We're dead." At this point someone who knew he took it quietly pointed at Davey. The drill instructor goes over to him and literally pulls him up out of his desk by his shirt collar and screams in his face, "Do you have the remote?" Feet dangling off of the ground, his whole arm was shaking as he took the remote out of his pocket and showed it. Today I effed up by trying to gay up my new apartment and triggering a SWAT response. My partner and I pulled my car into the parking lot of the library. It was a hot summer day and we were there to use the Wi-Fi and check out a couple books and return a couple that were overdue. I'd been inside about 10 minutes when some commotion started in the parking lot. My partner noticed and decided to go gawk at it while I finished up. Another 5 minutes go by and my partner hadn't returned. I'd seen a few police cars go by. I decided to go see what all the fuss was about. Heading to the door I noticed they're all clustered near my car. Well, this isn't good. On closer examination I noticed my partner approaching the group of officers. They'd just arrested some guy. Exiting I overheard the second half of the conversation. "And then you entered that vehicle, the blue one?" "Yes, officer." "And took these items?" "Yes, officer." "And you entered these vehicles?" The officer motioned to the row of cars, including mine. "Yes." There wasn't much of value in my car. A few days prior we had picked up a few items at a garage sale for the new apartment for cheap. I wasn't too concerned, none of the windows in any of the cars appeared smashed or anything. Behind the officers a swarm of vehicles had boxed in another, a boring sedan. The door was ajar and inside I could see another officer setting items on the hood. It was a modest collection. None of my possessions appeared to be in the rather sizable pile on the vehicle's hood. He added nervously, "Except that one." He motioned to my beat-up Saturn. And I say beat up, but really it looked like something out of Mad Max. The hood and quarter panel were painted flat black, while the rest of the car was purple. It was coated in a veneer of rust all over the underside, looking like it had been ridden hard and put up wet. My partner raised her voice, "Hey! Why not my car?" Well, I approached to correct her. I would regret this decision shortly. The officer gave a quizzical look at the would-be thief. "Yes, why not that car?" The officer says, turning back to the thief. At this point, I'd reached the small crowd and announced myself. "Excuse me, it's actually my car." I got a polite nod, and the officers continued. I gave a questioning and slightly annoyed towards my partner. The thief, now appearing quite anxious, retorted because of the dead body. There was a moment of silence as all the officers jerked up and all looked at him, then my car. Then me and my partner, all in rapid succession. They all reflexively put their hands on their sidearm and one of them looked at the two of us and said rather sharply, "Don't move." Great. So now we've gone from petty theft to body stashing. An officer keyed up his radio to call for backup, suspicion of ending, suspects at gunpoint. Visions of officers opening the trunk to find some gruesome scene flashed through my head. My stomach braced. My partner and I exchanged nervous looks. 2 other officers approached the car and peered into the back seat. At the same time then the guns came out of the holster and the 2 of them turned their attention to us, yelling, "Get on the ground." Well, this day is off to a great start. We've gone from overdue library books to ending people. Me and my partner both complied, while other officers opened up my car. I heard some excited noises from them followed by silence. Chief, you better come see this." Both of them were grinning and looking back at the thief, who looked pale as a ghost. The plot sickens. A third, Rather larger man sauntered over and then burst out laughing. Let them up, gesturing towards the officer with his knee in my back. Okay, what the actual F is going on? I wondered to myself. The chief is practically out of breath from choking down laughter and tells his subordinate with the thief to go ahead and put him in the back of a squad car. We both approach nervously and peer into the car. It was only. Then I realized what had happened. The thief had been going through the cars and skipped hours because, in the back seat, was a pile of mannequin parts. We'd found them in an alleyway a couple days prior in the esteemed Loring Park area, perhaps the gayest part of the Twin Cities. I'd entirely forgotten about them. We had intended to use them to decorate our new, and rather empty, apartment, and nothing says queer quite like a fashion mannequin holding coats by the door. He must have spotted them and decided they were the chopped up remains of someone. Now, we both knew they looked realistic enough because we'd managed to scare the shit out of a former roommate who liked to rummage through our stuff by leaving an arm and some pillows under a blanket to make her think one of us was sleeping there and discourage snooping. But of course, she'd gotten too curious and gotten a dose of karma for her trouble. And now all the officers were taking turns, looking back at us, and grinning ear to ear at us and the idiot thief. In the end, we were left with many apologies and another tale for friends of my fabled car of the damned. A few minutes later a SWAT truck, driven by some bored officers, pulled up and took their turn looking and laughing.
My husband cut all contact with his family. I've only just found out why. I love him. My 23 female husband, 24 male, is not from here, New York. He's from Ireland. We met when he went to university here and it was honestly love at first sight. I won't get into every part of our relationship, but around 6 months and I knew I wanted to marry him. So anyway, I've met his family. I thought they liked me but apparently not. They didn't come to our wedding but just told us they couldn't make it. A month ago he says he was cutting off everyone in his family except his little sister, 20 female, who goes to university here. I asked why. He didn't want to talk about it so I didn't push. That was really it until last night. He was working late and I was with his sister. We're pretty close. We were just chilling talking. And she mentions how lucky I was and that most men wouldn't have done what he did. I asked what she meant and this is what she said. He cut everyone off because they're anti-Semitic. They don't like that you're Jewish. They've always said they liked you but they were just putting on a face. A month ago, they started berating him about you, saying they hated your religion and he just blocked them all on everything. And that was that. She left, he came home, I made a little dinner and I brought it up. He kind of just broke down, apologized for not telling me, said he didn't want to upset me. It's pretty upsetting, but he has no need to apologize. I'm glad we were able to talk about it. I told my husband that we should get a divorce so he can marry his late wife's tombstone. I married my husband 10 years ago. Prior to our relationship, he had been married for 2 years to Lizzie. Sadly, she passed away because of ongoing health issues. I met my husband 5 years after her passing. At the beginning of our relationship, I had some issues with his romantic history. To put it bluntly, I was having trouble accepting my husband's past, and that he did not stop loving his late wife but was forced to do so. I went to therapy for a year to treat that, and I managed to overcome this issue. My husband knows this and was very supporting of me in the treatment. I now like to say that Lizzie and I would have been best friends. 3 months ago we found out that I am pregnant, after 8 years of trying. He has been visibly stressed out and reactive since the discovery, even though we both wished for a baby. The issue, after 10 years of marriage, we have been having a lot of arguments, derived for bad communication. We just seem to blow everything out of proportion. About 3 months ago, every time we have an argument, he takes the car and goes away for hours. When I asked where he went, he told me that he went to see her, Lizzie. Now, this is very weird from him, because he, at best, visits Lizzie's grave 3 times a year. I then asked him to not run away every time we fight, and to please tell me when he goes to the cemetery so we can go together. He just brushed me off. He has been doing this for months now, and it is destroying me. The feelings I fought the first year of our relationship are coming back. I am sad all the time, I cry at night. But my husband just keeps going away for hours. At this point, I think he is doing it out of spite more than anything else. Yesterday, I reached my limit. We fought over freaking trash, that's how petty our arguments are. He took the car at 4 p.m., returned at 11 p.m. I was waiting for him at the dining room. The convo went like this: me, where were you? Husband, I visited her again. Me, I've told you multiple times about how your actions hurt me, and you continue to do them. Husband, you can't stop me from going. Me, well, we can get a divorce. That way, you can marry Lizzie's tombstone, being that you care more about it than our marriage. I could see the shock in his face when I said that. I apologized immediately, but I think he did not hear me. I saw how he started crying. He has been locked in his office since yesterday and refuses to get out. I feel like the biggest jerk ever. What I said was a low blow and something horrible. I attacked him where I knew he was going to hurt. But, at the same time, a part of me thinks that what he is feeling right now is just a fraction of what he has put me through for months. I literally made a vow to Lizzie the day I got engaged. I told her you can take care of him from heaven, and I will take care of him here on earth. I broke that vow. Is there any way I can salvage this relationship?
My friends overheard that my girlfriend cheated on her ex and they try to convince me I am making a mistake. I am dating the best woman I've ever met. I have a very weird lifestyle with my traveling/moving around the world, and for the first time I've met a person who fits into my schedule. My intimacy life is very important to me and I've got high libido, but I never associated intimacy with many emotions. It's more about fun and that urge, not love. I never wanted an open relationship or anything like that, but if my partner wanted it, I probably wouldn't mind her to do whatever. My girlfriend cheated once on her ex. It's in the past and I don't think the story of their relationship is relevant. She just told me as in, it was wrong and I am ashamed, but I think you should know that before we decide whether we're serious about ourselves or not, I don't care. Their relationship was indeed toxic, but I probably wouldn't care even if it wasn't. Two of my best friends heard that she cheated and they're like two little devils on my arm, whispering to my ear that I should not be serious with a person who cheated. That even if I don't personally care about intimacy and emotional aspect, I should care that she broke his trust, yada yada yada. And maybe I should, but it's still in the past and I believe our past shapes our personalities, but it doesn't define who we will be in the future. I have zero doubts and I love her like crazy, so nothing you're gonna say is going to change my mind. But I am curious if my friends are too much, or is it the general opinion? Maybe I am insane here, but unless someone makes a significant mistake, like a domestic violence, I don't think I could ever tell another person whether they should/shouldn't be with their partner. On Father's Day, my family forgot to greet me, so I went radio silent. I'm tired of feeling like an outsider in my 15-year marriage. To my kids, I am just an open wallet and that guy who drives them to school. My wife has not kissed me in the last 6 months. I can't remember the last time she told me she loved me. It's either I'm forgotten, dismissed, or rejected. I am not verbally or physically aggressive. My love language is gifts. I like to splurge on birthdays. I make Mother's Day extra special for my wife. Whenever I throw parties, present gifts, or attempt to show how much I care about them, I get a lukewarm reaction. On good days, I might get a side hug. This week, I reached my limit. On Father's Day, I woke up to an empty house. There was no note or any other type of greeting. I received a text. I took the girls out for a spa day. Don't wait up. Then nothing. They come home around dinner time. I made small talk. How did your day go? Fine. I asked what they would like for dinner. Nothing. We already ate out. They dined at one of my favorite restaurants. They seemed to have forgotten it was Father's Day. Fast forward to Wednesday, which was my birthday. Again, nothing. I suggested we eat out and watch movies. Everyone claimed they were busy, which was highly unlikely. They were just sitting on their phones, doing their own thing. Thursday night, I laid in bed with my wife next to me. She rolls over and says indifferently, "Oh, your birthday was the other day. I guess you expect some action." I answered, "Nope. At this point, I don't expect anything anymore." "What is that supposed to mean?" She inquired. "When was the last time we kissed? When was the last time we were intimate? When was the last time you said you loved me? When was the last time we went on a date?" I couldn't stop myself from ranting. She was at loss for words. She asked why this was coming up out of the blue. I stated that this didn't happen overnight. I provided more examples of how they neglected me and made me feel insignificant. "I didn't realize you were serious," she said. "I didn't realize it was such a big deal." I left, saying something to the effect of, "If you want to pretend that I'm invisible and don't exist, fine. You don't have to pretend anymore." I left the house just before midnight. I haven't been home since. I'm not sure what to do now. I stood up for myself for the first time in 15 years. I love my family, but I can't keep this up. I just can't do it anymore. I tried to be a good provider, a loving partner and the best dad. I never missed a single event in our children's lives. I took on more responsibility to better our lives and future, but it was never appreciated. It is never enough. I am never enough. After a few days of being concerned, my children contacted me. I assured them I was fine, but I do love and miss them. But I needed space. I was there constantly. I want them to know what it's like without me. You never realize the value of something until it's gone. This is a lesson they would have to learn the hard way. When I'm ready, I will present 2 folders for my wife to pick from. One would contain papers for legal separation. The other would have referrals for therapy. Whatever she picks, our future is in her hands.
Throwaway time. What's your secret that could literally ruin your life if it came out? I run a cake business. I charge people hundreds for wedding cakes. Every last one is made using Pillsbury cake mix I buy for $1 a box at Walmart. I suck at baking. Every time I've ever tried to make a cake from scratch it sucked. But baking is like my whole deal. My friends all call me the cake girl. It's like my whole life is a lie. People compliment my cakes all the time, telling me how delicious they are, telling me it's so much better than box mix cake, telling me they could never bake a cake so delicious. Well, guess what? For $1, they too can make a cake just as delicious. Just add oil, eggs and water. In my defense, I love cake decorating. I make all of the frostings and fondant from scratch. I just hate baking effing cakes. I base my prices mostly on the decoration of the cakes and not of the cake itself, if that makes sense. Still, no one knows about this except my husband. Even my best friends think I effing slave over the oven mixing and baking these damn cakes. I have been doing this for years. If anyone knew, my business and reputation would be in the toilet for sure. I keep telling myself I have to learn how to make the damn cakes without the box mixes, but I never do it. I feel like such a sham sometimes.
My husband broke up with me because he cheated. But the truth was much worse. I was 18 when we started dating. It was the best 4 years of my life. I truly thought he was my soulmate, the one I'll grow old with, the one who will be with me no matter what. But Atlas, it wasn't. This happened a year ago, and I've just found out. Every Saturday he would take me out for dinner. This Saturday was no exception. He took me out to my favorite restaurant. We had fun like our normal dates. But no, this was different. His face was kind of rather sad, but happy because we were having a good time. But nearing towards the end of our dinner, he had tears in his eyes but had a warm smile. I was quite quiet that time. Before he broke down saying, he doesn't want to be with me anymore. I was so confused. We had a good time, we were about to move into a home together, there was nothing wrong. I just didn't understand. Until he told me, he cheated on me. It broke my heart. This was ironic, because at the start of our relationship, he had very strong feelings against cheating. Of course, I broke up with him on the spot and left. Crying. Something in me did not believe when he said that, but I chucked it up to wanting to forgive him. I ignored him whenever I bumped into him and just moved on. However, just a few hours ago, his mother, who I met, came by. We had a great bond, so it didn't really bother me that my ex's mom was around. I looked up to her as my mother figure because mine left me and my father. She came by, her eyes filled with tears, and gave me an envelope and just left. I opened the envelope, it was a heartfelt message for my ex. I won't really write everything, but the gist of it was, he had lung cancer. And he only broke up with me because he didn't want to see me heartbroken over him. He said that he had only estimated time of 2 months left. And if I wanted to see him, I could, but if I didn't, he did not blame me. This brought me to tears. I feel a mix of sadness and hurt by why he had lied to me. This is far worse than cheating in my opinion. I want to see him, but I don't want to at the same time. I love him, but what he did to me is unforgivable. I don't know what to do at this point. If I go there, a part of me wants to be with him during his last moments, another part wants to go and scream at him at the top of my lungs about how much hurt he has caused. I'm at a loss, I don't know what to do.
The 8-year-old girl next door just broke my heart. I'm a 24-year-old guy, I love tooling around in old cars, something I've done together with my dad since I was a kid. He was all too happy to have me carry it on. So I work your typical 8 to 4 to 5 schedule, and quite often I'm in the garage after work fixing up this old Mustang I've been on for the last 2 years or so. So one day, I started leaving the garage door open, and it's to the front so pretty much everyone can see what I'm doing. People stop by, chat, say hello, it's great, I always love to chat it up, especially older folks that are happy to see a young guy getting his hands dirty working hard on a classic. So about a year ago during the summer, the neighbor's mom asked if I could look after their little girl Rachel, a quiet little girl that always seemed well behaved. I didn't mind, but I said I'm really committed to working on this car. If you feel good enough to let her over here while I'm working on the car, not a problem. Turns out they're going through a divorce. The dad works the third shift, the mom's got a part-time gig, evening hours just aren't good for M. Okay, so this starts, and it goes fine. She's quiet, usually reading books or watching the TV I brought out so she would be around me. I always made sure to be courteous, firm, and try out dad humor every now and then. Well, she starts to come out of her shell after a while, and it was a joy. She asked why I was working on the car. Why are you working on that car when you have one that's newer and works? Well, this car is about 45 years older than the other one, it's a classic. She'll be much prettier when I'm done with her. I've been sitting in the garage helping my pop since I was younger than you. I always wanted to be like him, and so I'd sit and learn, and eventually he let me help. Oh. Whenever I see dad, he's always sleeping. Well, he's working hard to provide for you, he's working a tough job. She just kind of was quiet after that. But after 2 or 3 months, she started being cheerful when she came over, always asking questions about what I was doing specifically. This part and that, why it needed to be done, what made it work. I was glad to impart knowledge. I think everyone likes teaching a bit, especially something you're passionate about. I started teaching her about tools, how to recognize which ones you need, what they can do on a car or around the house. She started to light up. I got the sense that besides school, she didn't have much of a parental figure. Or anyone to teach her anything about life, or anything. One time my dad visited in his 66 GT convertible, and I took her for a ride in it. I'll always remember how she smiled, saying, "Is this what yours is going to be like?" Should be, but mine's a coupe so it won't be quite as nice. No, yours will be much better. 'Cause we've been doing it. My chin started to wobble and I just smiled and said, "You're right, it will be." She'd really started to grow on me. I mean, it would be impossible not to let her into your heart. A bright-eyed smart little girl that just soaks up everything you teach her, wants to learn, and looks up to you like that. It made me sad, because the times I saw her parents interact they were always snide or yelling at each other, when they were around that is. This spring I started noticing the mother leaving without a uniform, sometimes dressed to go out. I came to the conclusion she quit or wasn't working, but still taking advantage of me babysitting. Which I didn't mind in the slightest. Sometimes Rachel would be quiet when she came over, but I always waited until she would open up. She'd let out tidbits like, "Mommy woke me up late at night, she was acting funny." Or, "She came home with someone that wasn't daddy," or the like. It would pierce my heart, but I didn't know what to do except keep being a safe harbor for her of sorts. She started hugging me more often, squeezing me as hard as she could. I'd always get a lump in my throat. She's just wormed her way into my heart. How when I take a break and sit down, she'll climb all over me until I give her the proper attention, every now and then when she does some mannerism or phrase she picked up from me. Even just when I ask her to hand me a tool and she picks the proper one, no problem. One time she hurt herself with the edge of the radiator support and I picked her up and went to bandage it up. I told her, "Most girls your age would cry if they got that little cut," she said brightly. "Now my hands are gonna get all beat up like yours." I didn't know what to say, so I burst out laughing and hugged her and said, "You're the best little girl in the world, you know that?" Then a few weeks ago, her mom came over and said they were going to get a divorce, and if I could still keep watching her during the week. I told her I was sorry and absolutely, she's a delight to have around. Yesterday she was morose and quiet unlike she had been in a long time. Turns out her parents will be separating and they'll have to move soon. She started crying and hugged me, asking if it meant she won't be able to come over anymore. I started tearing up a bit and choked out, I don't know Rachel, I don't know. I hope you can. I love you, you know that? You're the smartest, cutest, best little girl in the world and I love you. She just cried all the harder and said I love you too. She even asked if she could stay with me. Again I said I don't know, but I don't think it's in the cards. When she left yesterday I just sat down with a bottle of Jack and started crying. That sweet beautiful little girl that wants to be just like me, giggles when she gets grease on her, tosses on my old dirty sweater when she comes over cause she wants to help. I just want to take her up in my arms and take away that pain. She doesn't deserve to have a poo childhood growing up with a non-existent father or a poo mother. FCK I just can't deal with it. It effing tears my heart apart. My delusional brother-in-law thinks I embarrassed him by allowing my perfect wife to wear expensive jewelry to dinner because he's too broke to afford anything fancy. I freaking love my wife more than anything. She's my rock and has been an infallible beacon of light for me this year, which is why I don't tolerate any BS towards her. I lost my job at the beginning of the year, and when things got tough, she buckled up. She got a part-time job to help us stay afloat, and didn't have a single negative thing to say about it all. When I finally got my life together, I wanted to do something nice for my wife since she truly deserved it. She's a classic girly girl and loves to dress up, go out, etc. And with our finances in order, I bought her a diamond necklace that was really elegant, but also something she could wear daily to show it off. She's worn it to many occasions and there weren't any problems, until Thanksgiving dinner with our families. Her sister-in-law noticed the necklace and complimented my wife on it. My wife happily told her it was a surprise, and her sister-in-law agreed that it was a super sweet sentiment, complimented me on my choice, and overall the family thought it was a nice gift, especially knowing that we went through hard times. My wife told me she felt special being the center of attention like that for just a few minutes, and I told her she deserved it for being such an amazing person and the best wife I could ever ask for. A few days after the dinner, my brother-in-law texted me, calling me an a-hole for using Thanksgiving dinner to show off and make it all about me. He said that I shouldn't have allowed my wife to wear such flashy jewelry to dinner and upstage everyone else, and that it was super selfish and conceited of us. I was stunned to be honest, because the necklace discussion only lasted several minutes, and the rest of the family only had nice things to say about it. He said that he used that necklace to show off because our family isn't incredibly well off. I told him that he was making a big deal out of nothing because the entire family was happy about it, and it was his wife that pointed it out in the first place. That's what got the family talking about it, my wife never bragged about it. I asked him why he was bringing this up days later and he said it's because I'm putting pressure on him to get his wife something extravagant for Christmas. I told him his wife needs a genuine gift from him, not something to beat my gift. I don't feel like it's really my responsibility to care about how my brother-in-law feels about a gift I got for my wife, and that if he feels pressure it's not on me. I let him know that I don't allow my wife to wear anything, she chooses everything all on her own, so I don't appreciate his comment one bit. He told me to go F myself because now he has to measure up to a loser. Initially, I wanted to keep the messages from my wife because I don't want her to feel bad about wearing the necklace or sour her relationship with her brother, but we don't keep any secrets from each other so I felt that lying wasn't the best option either. When she read the texts, she was livid. I've never seen her so upset, especially at family. She immediately called her brother and just reamed him out for his insensitivity. They got in a long argument and her brother said he was worried that she was going down a slippery slope of becoming a superficial beach, and that we shouldn't force our financial success on other people. That comment honestly shocked the both of us because while they weren't close growing up he's never talked to her like that before. My wife told her brother that if he wasn't going to be happy for her, that she had one thoughtful treat from her husband after a really crappy year, then she had nothing to say to him. She told him to never contact her ever again because from that moment on, they weren't family anymore. A few hours later, my wife did get a text from sister-in-law, saying she heard the conversation and was mortified. She at least reassured us that she was happy for our success after working so hard and that she'd try to talk some sense into her husband. Regardless, my wife and I decided to spend Christmas without brother-in-law and his wife. At this point, there's just too much tension, and I didn't want to risk him ruining Christmas because I wouldn't put it past him to find the gifts we get her family too luxurious and pitching a fit in response. And this might make me an a-hole, but I'm going to get my wife a nice matching bracelet for Christmas. I'm breaking up with my girlfriend because she changed her looks to resemble my dead wife. I, 35 male, was married to Laura for 7 years. We have a son who is 10 now. She was the light of my life. When we were both 28 we found out she had a rare form of cancer. She passed away 5 months later. This crushed me and I was left drowning in my grief for a long time afterwards. My son and I have been attending therapy weekly ever since. It's been tough, but I feel like we've made a lot of progress. I didn't feel up to another relationship for a while. I've filled my time with hobbies, friends, and spending time with my son and family. Then, a little over a year ago I met Kayla, 33 female, at a work event. We share a hobby that's pretty niche where I live so we had a great time chatting about it. Eventually we began to go out together. She's great, but differing from my wife. I love her for who she is as an individual. I was hesitant at first, but after speaking with my therapist I decided to try for a committed relationship if we took it slow. At first she was amazing. I told her about my past and that my son comes first even before our first official date. She was very compassionate and understanding about everything. After a few months of smooth sailing I decided to introduce her to my son and they got along great as well. For the first time after Laura's death I could start to see a possible future with someone else. Everything started to go downhill around 4 months ago. She seemed to be a bit more distant than usual, so I sat down with her one night to ask her what was wrong. She teared up a bit and confessed that she felt like I had been neglecting her lately. She then said that she feels like I'm using her as some replacement for my dead wife. This came as a total shock. A part of me will always love Laura, but I didn't feel like I was ignoring Kayla or anything. I asked for some specific examples, but she didn't say much afterwards. I felt guilty that I had made her upset, so I ended up apologizing and arranged for us to have a few more date nights, and she seemed happy again. Then a couple weeks later she had to go to a cousin's wedding. I couldn't attend because of work, but she was only gone for a day. When she got back I asked for pictures, but she just said there hadn't been any of her. I thought it was a bit strange but didn't pry. Then, the next day a coworker of mine showed me one off of a private page on Facebook. I was shocked to see an expensive pair of my wife's earrings on Kayla. In my son's room there is a small cupboard with pictures of him and his mom, letters from her, and some of her prized jewelry. I checked it as soon as I came home and the earrings were returned to the cupboard but in a different spot. I confronted her and she got mad, yelling at me for assuming she'd be so careless as to lose or damage the earrings. I told her I was just hurt she'd go behind my back and take something with sentimental value, even if they were beautiful. She eventually broke down and apologized, and after a serious talk about boundaries we moved on. Things improved for a while before her strange behavior started. It began with her changing her hair color to match my wife's. My wife had naturally light blonde hair that a lot of women dye their hair to today, so while I thought it was strange, I wrote it off as a beauty choice. Then, she began regularly straightening her hair. She has wavy hair and my wife's hair was pin straight. She also started to change her clothes to be more like my wife's, or at least the one she's seen in pictures. She also had her ears double pierced and got a cartilage piercing like my wife. This was all incredibly unnerving, but she just said I was crazy. I'd asked my family and they said I was nuts too, so I ignored it. Then she brought up having my son call her mama. I said I wasn't a huge fan of the idea, but if my son wanted it I suppose it'd be fine. She went on a whole rant about how it was different because he called my wife mommy, so it's not like she's stealing a title. He said no and she was a bit cold to both of us for days. She seemed like a totally different woman than the one I fell in love with. Everyone around me just said I was probably nervous since it's my first relationship after Laura's death. The final straw was when she got a tattoo that was almost the exact same as my wife's. It was in the same spot, same color, just with a slightly different design. That was my final straw. I sat her down and confronted her a week ago with everything. At first she denied it all but then broke down into tears and said I never loved her. She said she felt that she had to live up to the memory of a ghost. This upset me because I had asked her before what I did specifically and she wouldn't discuss it. Plus she was the one being weird and copying Laura. She kept sobbing and saying I didn't love her. I got so sick of it I yelled at her saying that if she felt so unloved we should just break up. I honestly do like her, but I've seen how miserable she has been lately and I don't think this relationship is good for her mental health. She got dead silent and just left and drove away. I was just so tired of everything. Later that night she tried to off herself with pills and barely survived. She has no living family, so I was listed as her emergency contact. She wrote a long letter to me saying she loves me so much, but obviously I don't feel the same, and that maybe if she was dead too I'd love her even a fraction of how much I loved my dead wife. I'm distraught over this. She's been so strange lately, but before all of this I really did love her. My mom and siblings keep on saying that I'm awful for pushing her to this point and that instead of ending it, I should have doubled down in reassuring my love for her. They all got along great with her and had been hinting that they wanted us to get married, so my son would have a mother again and possibly some siblings. I didn't think I was the jerk, but my whole family is being cold to me and I have no idea what to do. They're saying I should go visit as soon as possible and support her with this to rekindle our relationship. I'm not sure if I want to do that. She's so unhappy with me, and seems obsessed over my dead wife. I keep on thinking over this and wondering if I should have reassured her of my love again or broken up with her in a more tactful way. I'm lost on what to do.
Ending a 5-year marriage because of my crazy mother-in-law. This whole situation is embarrassing and I am just done with it. I've been with my husband for 5 years now. Married for 3. Well, long story short, his mom was always overwhelming and bold with her input on everything, to put it nicely. I genuinely think it's not fair to be mad at your partner for something he didn't do himself. He can't control what his mom does or says. But what's also not fair is him not addressing it when I am clearly uncomfortable or upset and instead just talking me into brushing it off or going with it. I never nor would I ever have a back and forth with my mother-in-law. Just not worth barking at each other. I always kind of brush it off if it's a snarky comment or if it's a better way to do something in her opinion. I'll just tell her thanks for the suggestion but we are fine. It's actually true, the saying when you marry someone, you marry their family. I think the way to handle it is that each spouse should keep his side of the family in line, for lack of a better way to say it. I deal with my parents and their shenanigans and I expected him to do the same. He never did. He always asks me to give her some grace. Well, it's hard when that person is insulting you. For a while now she has been making comments about how my son doesn't look like my husband when he was a toddler. Basically accusing me of sleeping around. This rightfully upset me. Sorry, my genes are strong, what do I tell you? I was short with my husband because he didn't address how out of pocket and disrespectful this whole thing is. It has been a week since my husband, well, soon-to-be ex-husband told me that he would be doing a paternity DNA test, not because he thinks that it's not his son but to shut his mom up. Yes, exactly what you read. I don't know which one is worse, him accusing me of cheating or this poop. But all I know is this is audacious. I didn't cheat and I am not concerned one bit about the test results. I wasn't going to stop him from taking a DNA test or whatever, but I just know I don't want to deal with this any longer. I am looking for an apartment and I talked to a lawyer the day after he brought this DNA test thing up. And I've been acting more than normal since. We'll be getting the results in 2 days. I can't wait. He would be also getting divorce papers with that too. I know for a fact he won't see it coming. I tried my best to make this whole thing work and manage my relationship with my mother-in-law as gracefully as possible. But thinking about it, it's not just my mother-in-law that's the problem, but how he is handling things is also a problem. And side note, I never been more glad that I didn't leave my job when I got married. He makes more than enough to take care of the financial side of things. I thought I would get bored. I only have to be on site 2 days per week. I really love my job and the company, so I didn't leave. Best decision I ever made. He is unreliable to say the least. I know that divorce can be hard on kids, but I experienced the other side. Living with 2 parents that hated each other and violently fought almost all the time is as hard, maybe even harder. They thought that staying together would be good for me and my siblings. Newsflash, it wasn't. It was traumatizing to say the least. I don't remember, I either read somewhere or maybe my therapist told me that when you fight with your spouse you shouldn't see it as me versus you. But more like, me and you versus the particular situation or problem on hand and try to figure it out. But it's really hard to do so when you start hating that person. I don't want my son to live like that because I tell one thing, I just can't stand my husband anymore. I don't know if this is a weird way of saying it, but I just don't respect him anymore, if that makes sense. I just see an unreliable man and I know for a fact that our fights won't be the same as before. I would have said what a waste of 5 years, but I have a sweet and smart gremlin now, and having a child really pushes you to be better and to do better, so I can't complain. Ending a 5-year marriage because of my crazy mother-in-law. The day he was supposed to receive the results, I called my father-in-law and invited them to come over that evening. He was working when he got the results. He sent them to me and told me he would talk to his mother to finally put this to rest. I informed him that I had already invited them for this evening and I am just waiting for my apology before I leave. I asked that he come home so we can talk before they come over. He called, and I basically told him that this is not working for me anymore. I've already talked to an attorney, filed for divorce, and it might be more expensive than a paternity test, but it would be more effective making his mother happy. And no, I don't care that he was working when I told him. I don't think he would have either. He left work and came home. Long story short, we had a spectacular fight. He said that I am not thinking about my son and I am overreacting because it's not like he went behind my back. And if he knew that I was this upset, he wouldn't have done it. But he knew. We fought about it when he brought it up. He just didn't care. When I gave him the divorce papers, he said he's not signing anything and he'll ask his mother to apologize when his parents arrive and get done with this. Listen, I don't need him to sign it to get a divorce. It would only make things complicated, that's it. His mother said, she has nothing to apologize for. She wouldn't apologize for having suspicions. She didn't accuse me of anything and I can leave if I want to. So that's that. I did leave that night because I wasn't going to get an apology, and he didn't seem to understand that him reinforcing that it's okay for her to meddle is why I want a divorce in the first place. He eventually told his parents he'll be coming over from time to time to check up on them, he is their only child, and not to bother coming over anymore until she apologizes. She wasn't amused. She told me I am taking her son away and some WH_re would take my son too. She is not someone that you can talk to, I'll tell you that much. It's like talking to a wall. All she knows is insulting or being passive-aggressive on a good day. We're not getting a divorce. We talked the day after. He said I can always file for a divorce, but we should at least try couples counseling because he doesn't want to co-parent. Edit, he doesn't want to lose his son, plain and simple. Although it's not like if we were to get divorced he wouldn't be able to see his son, but whatever. He did say, when we talked the second time, that he can see how he was wrong, especially knowing his mother. He also mentioned that he'll just shut her down if she meddles this time. But what can I do with just words? I hope he can learn a thing or two on how to deal with his mother in counseling because she is truly overwhelming. If counseling would help him understand that a couple means 2 people, not 3, and our marriage is a bit crowded right now. That's enough for me. People saying that I am overreacting in my last post made me ask myself, do I actually want a divorce or am I just mad? I wanted the divorce at the time, it seemed like the only solution. But if counseling would help us, I can try to work things out. I hope this is a good decision. If not, I am not stuck. I'll take my son and leave. I have a friend who got divorced in 20 days, an uncontested divorce. When you are on the same page regarding how things would be divided, including custody, it's a matter of how long the court would take to review and finalize the divorce, and you'll be done. That was my plan. Nonetheless, I am the one working from home, and my son is still so young. It's totally up to him. If he wants to see his son every day when he gets off work, or if he wants to see his son just a couple of times per week. Because I am not tolerating this anymore. Oh, one last thing. People in my last post were debating if paternity tests should be mandatory or not. I thought that from what I wrote, it was clear I didn't cheat and I have nothing against the paternity test itself. It should be obvious to everyone that it's not fair for the child nor the man to be tricked into living a lie. If he was the one who had suspicions, that's a big deal. We would have talked about why he thinks that, taken the paternity test for his peace of mind, and made sure we can trust each other then move on, all without anyone interfering let alone requesting the fucking paternity test. Edit 2. Someone asked curious why they asked for the test and why you're so against it? I don't want to assume there was some troubles in the past but I feel like there's a lot of let up and information left out here. At this point, I've shared so much that these aren't too many details, I guess. I am not religious. I also dated women at a certain time. She doesn't like that and thinks that me not being religious or not being straight means I have no values or something. She hates that her son married a non-religious person. He is a believer, but he's a non-practicing believer. Either way, his religion or my lack of belief doesn't cause us any problems in our day-to-day life.
What's the most effed up thing a family member of yours has done? My dad's a consummate prankster. His crowning achievement, in college, has since become illegal in 2 states. Step 1, he and several buddies go to a Cadillac dealership at 5 o'clock on a Friday. This was before credit cards and automatic banking by the way. Step 2, they wrote a check for the asking price of one of the shiny new models and drove off with it. Step 3, they saw the car at a used Cadillac dealership across town. Step 4, the used dealer calls the new dealer, and tells him that the car was sold with the dealer plates still on, and the price tag still in the window. Step 5, new dealer figures that the check the kids wrote is going to bounce, so he calls the cops. Step 6, my dad and his friends spend the weekend in jail. Step 7, the bank's open Monday morning, the check doesn't bounce. Step 8, my dad and his friends sue the dealers in the state for wrongful imprisonment, and get a settlement of thousands of dollars more than the cost of the car. Basically, the plan was to seem as shady as possible and get wrongfully arrested for it. They had the lawyer set up before they bought the car. Dad used his share to pay for his and another friend's. How did you meet the love of your life? Had a job at the fort, historical site, tours and stuff. I was a musician and they asked if I could try learning to play bugle. The boss's daughter had a friend who played trumpet. She tried teaching me but I was hopeless. A few months later I shared a 3-legged kitchen chair with her at a New Year's party. Several months of dating go by, we're watching TV and a Monty Python commercial came on. At the end it says if your girlfriend laughed at this, marry her. She did, so I did. We'll be married 12 years this fall, 2 kids, and I still love her more than anything. I was using a dating site to find other single parents to have another adult to talk to when I took the kid out to do things. Because of odd hours, I ended up talking to a guy from London. I was in Atlanta, Georgia at the time. After 3 months of ridiculous phone bills and 2 trips, we got married. 16 years later, he's getting to vote in his first presidential election.
My mother ruined my childhood over an accident. I'm now in my 20s, reflecting on a childhood that was tainted by my mother's entitled behavior. Back when I was around 10 years old, I made a mistake that kids sometimes do. I accidentally broke a vase in our living room while playing ball indoors. It was an honest mistake, but my mother's reaction was anything but reasonable. Instead of treating it as a learning opportunity or a chance to teach me about accidents, my mother unleashed a torrent of entitlement that would haunt me for years. She started berating me, calling me names, and then she did the unimaginable. She grounded me for a whopping 6 months. Yes, you read that right, half a year for a broken vase. But wait, it gets worse. She didn't stop at just grounding me. She went on a rampage to ensure that my life was miserable during those 6 months. She barred me from seeing my friends, attending any extracurricular activities, and worst of all, she confiscated anything remotely enjoyable, my books, games, and even my art supplies. It felt like a prison sentence for a mistake that any kid could have made. She would hold this mistake over my head for years to come, using it to guilt-trip me and control my actions. She'd bring it up in front of family and friends, painting me as some sort of delinquent, all over a simple accident. The psychological toll this took on me was immense, and I still find myself grappling with self-esteem issues because of her behavior. Looking back, it's clear that my mother's entitlement and extreme measures weren't about teaching me a lesson or correcting my behavior. It was about her need for control and dominance, even at the expense of her own child's well-being. I talked to her about this, but she said she didn't remember and that I was probably exaggerating.
Am I the jerk for wanting to leave my boyfriend for something his parents said? So, I 26 female, black, and my boyfriend 32 male, white, have been dating for about 5 months now and he is honestly the best thing that ever happened to me. He is the first guy who's ever made me consider marriage and starting a family. I did love him. Now to the story. Last weekend was his mom's 60th birthday and my boyfriend was going to go to the birthday party. He thought it would be a nice occasion for him to introduce me to his family, so he asked me to join him. We let his family know that he was bringing me and they were okay with it. His parents' place is 3 hours away from the city we live in, so we decided that we were going to spend the night. So, we arrived at his parents' place and his mom, dad, brother and sister were there. They hugged me while greeting me and I honestly thought they were genuinely happy to meet me. It didn't feel like anything was off. They all seemed like nice people. So we spent the evening talking, and there was a lot of laughter and everything was going great. At around 8 p.m., My boyfriend and his brother leave for the airport to pick up a relative of theirs who was flying in for the party. So, I'm left at the house with his mom, dad and sister. I didn't feel unsafe or anything. They had been nice to me the whole time. I had left my phone charging in the room we were gonna sleep in, so I excused myself to go check if I had any important messages or calls. There weren't any, so it didn't take long. I start heading back to the living room, and as I'm walking back, I hear them talking. Then his mom asks, "So, what do you think about her?" I immediately knew they were talking about me, and I honestly wanted to know what my potential in-laws thought about me, so I stopped and listened. His dad says, "She's nice." His sister agrees with him and adds, "She's pretty too." Then his mom says something that immediately made me sick to my stomach. She says, "Yeah, if only she wasn't an effing N-word." And they all agreed with her. My heart dropped. I tiptoed back to the room and I sat there so confused. I was shaking so much I didn't know what to do. I wanted to call my boyfriend, but I had a weird feeling, so I didn't. I felt so alone and unsafe. I felt like I couldn't trust anyone around me, not even my boyfriend. I live in Canada and people here are not as open with their racism as in other places, which in my opinion, is much more scary. Now at that moment, the only people I could think of asking for help were my sisters. One of my sisters lives in the US and the other one is in Canada, but in a different province. They both live far away, so there is nothing they could have done to help me at that moment, but I felt like they are the only people I could trust. We have a WhatsApp group chat, so I sent them a message telling them what happened. I have lived in Canada for a couple of years, but it's not easy to make trustworthy friends here. Canada is a lonely place. I have met a lot of people, but I don't feel like any of them are my friends. If you are an immigrant in Canada, you probably understand what I mean. Anyway, back to the story. So my sisters were like, "You need to find a way to get out of there immediately." They tell me to make up an excuse saying I had an emergency and needed to leave. I stayed in the room for some time, scared to death. It took everything in me not to start crying. After I had collected my thoughts and calmed down, I did what my sisters told me to do. I hadn't unpacked my bag yet, and luckily, we brought my car cause it's fuel efficient compared to my boyfriend's. I took my bag and car keys and passed the living room in a rush, saying something came up and I had to leave. I didn't give them a chance to ask any questions. I just got in my car and drove away. It was getting late and I wasn't in the right state of mind to drive back home. I just wanted to get as far away as possible before stopping at a hotel for the night. My boyfriend had called me a couple of times. I called him back, but I couldn't bring myself to tell him what had happened, so I gave him the same excuse I gave his parents. He asked if he should come home as well, and I told him it wasn't necessary. I went home the next day and my boyfriend showed up at my apartment a few hours later. I looked at him and it felt like all the love I had for him had just disappeared. Though I acted like everything was fine, I wondered if he was racist too. He had been so great during our whole relationship. I never once felt like he had any racist thoughts or feelings. But I can't help but think about how his family made me believe they were nice people, and I keep wondering if he's also just pretending to like me. We don't live together, but my lease is ending in July. He owns his place, so I was supposed to move in with him after my lease ended, but I have managed to get out of moving in with him. I don't feel like I love him anymore. It's been 3 days now since we got back from his parents' place, and I want to end things with him without it causing any trouble, but I'm really scared. I want to tell him what happened, but I'm scared of finding out that he's racist as well. I don't know how he's going to react. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but there are so many stories of women getting unalived by their partners, and I'm scared that I could end up unalived too. I guess I'm imagining the worst case scenario and I'm judging him based on his parents' actions and not his. But I am genuinely scared. Even if he isn't racist, his family is. And if we stay together, no matter how much I try to avoid his family, there are still going to be situations where I'll have to interact with them, and I don't think I can ever move past what they said. Please help.
I took my little brother, who has the eating disorder ARFID, out to a bar today, and I'm so proud of him. My brother, 18 male, has struggled with an eating disorder called ARFID all his life. To those unfamiliar with the condition, it is not based on his appearance or the desire to lose weight, it is based on the food color, texture, flavor, etc. Most of the time he survives on his very few safe foods: pasta, bread, some varieties of cheese, some types of cookies, tomatoes, and some other stuff. It is very restrictive. My mom has always tried to make him try other things, but he gags as soon as he puts the food in his mouth or even before that. I, 23 female, have struggled with another eating disorder, so I never pressure him into anything, and I feel like he feels safer around me in that aspect because he has tried things I cook out of his own will, although they're usually bland things or similar stuff to his safe foods. But today was different. Very different. Months ago on his birthday, I told him I would take him to this thematic bar near where we live, where the whole thing is decorated with stuff from video games and nerdy pop culture, and the food and drinks are all styled in that same manner. The big thing about this bar, and the reason why it is so popular, is that you get to play games while eating. The thing is that I was broke as heck up until recently, so just now I was able to fulfill my promise. We made the reservation more than a week ago for today and asked for a table for two with an Xbox. He was visibly excited about this plan, and so was I. However, we never even talked about the food. I assumed we could have some fries, soda, and cheese sticks. But man, was I in for a big surprise. Once we got to our table, we started looking at the menu. He said, I could try the Chikorita burrito or the Pikachu burger. I looked at those items on the menu and they both had ingredients that he had never tried before, and I would have thought he would be terrified of trying. I'm talking sautéed mushrooms, cilantro sauce, basil, etc. I asked him if he was sure and he said he was, but asked me to tell the waiter to not put beans in his burrito. And for the drink, he ordered a Baby Yoda drink, which was vodka. The legal age to drink here is 18, by the way, with various flavors of creams and stuff. I'm not good at alcohol names, but it basically tasted of white chocolate, mint, and vodka. Delicious. I let him order those things and thought, well, if he backtracks, I'll eat those and order something else for him, but I didn't have to. He nervously unwrapped the burrito and took a small bite while I pretended to not be watching. He tells me I think I had a mushroom, but I'm not sure. It's good anyways. And I was just so proud. Then the drink. The first time he drank alcohol. He took a sip and said it was tasty, but it burned his throat. He drank it all throughout the 2.5 hours we stayed there though. I beat his butt on Mortal Kombat several times, and when we were out of the bar, he said I had read online that the games were good and the place was beautiful but that the food was bad, but I actually think everything was amazing. It felt surreal. I know it sounds like a regular Friday evening to most people, but this seriously marked a milestone for him, and I'm just so happy that he trusts me enough to eat new things with me. I'm a proud bigger sister, y'all.
I took my girlfriend out and made her pay. I don't know why she's upset. My girlfriend and I are not flat broke, but we are in a place where saving money is a priority. She budgets beautifully, and is wonderful with saving money, therefore it is fair to say she has more money than I do. My girlfriend makes it a point to make us go out to dinner once a week or every other week. Whenever the bill comes, the waiter hands me the check, and without missing a beat I always ask her, "Can you pay?" She always agrees. I think this is such a nice perk in the relationship. I like when she takes me on dates. It makes me feel good about saving my money, and she has more than me anyway, so she needs it less. I have good food. She spends the whole evening asking about me, complimenting me, enjoying my company, and planning our future. The problem came up last night when she had a huge craving for appetizers and margaritas. She complained about spending her day off cleaning the entire kitchen, and she didn't want to dirty any other dishes. I suggested we go out, and she didn't see a problem with it. We had a great meal. Between the two of us we had a few margaritas and the bill was adding up. Before the bill came, she asked if I would mind if we split the check, and began to explain how much these nights out are really eating away at her food budget. This is where I got confused. I would have never offered if I knew I would have to pay for my half. She also jabbed at me for always letting her pay, and never once offering. She feels she's being taken advantage of, and if it wasn't for her, we would never go on dates because she's the one who pays. We had a small argument, she got really upset, paid the check, and we walked home without speaking. I said we just won't go out to dinner anymore. This suggestion or any other suggestions wasn't helpful. She's been distant and incredibly upset and is now mentioning the weirdest problems and making me feel like a bad boyfriend. She's even mentioned wanting to break up over a $140 check. My portion of the bill was $95, by the way. What was your high school's biggest scandal? After the expansion of the parking lot, the high school hiked the cost of parking spaces, then cut the amount of spaces available to students. It was literally the opposite of what they said they would do: expand the lot to add more student capacity, then drop the per space price. The price hike wasn't small either. It went from $30 to $45 a semester, to well over $100. The student body was so angry that the student government went from decorating the halls to actually pushing back on the administration like a legitimate political body. They filed formal grievances which were completely ignored, then made objections in official meetings with the administration which were dismissed. Then they stopped cooperating with the administration until their grievances were addressed, meaning that when the school told them to do the work for pep rallies and dances, they got told to get lost. The administration then revoked the staff involvement with the student government and told them that the club was now over. They basically shut down the student government, defunded it, refused to support it, and ignored the student government's constitution. Then, the student government decided that it was still a viable political entity, government in exile almost, and organized a mass protest during school hours, which was actually pretty tame. During the break between classes, everyone would go to the gym and show their support for addressing the parking lot issue. The class before this protest was to take place, the principal announced on the PA system and said that the gymnasium was closed, and if anyone was either in the gymnasium or not in their class for the next class they would be arrested. I went down to the gym to check it out. There were hundreds of students who still wanted to go and quietly crowded around the gym's doors, but the doors were barricaded by administrators with crossed arms, and the school resource officer and a backup officer, both in full battle rattle with pepper spray, cuffs, gun, and everything else you'd see a cop with on patrol. We later found out that administrators had pulled members of the student government out of class during this time, and several of them were threatened with immediate expulsion. The student government and body blinked. Everyone went to class on time and the issue basically died. At next month's pep rally, we were informed that a new student government had been appointed and we were introduced to them. The head of the government said something about fighting the parking fees, but the message that the student body had gotten from the administration was clear: step out of line, and we'll push you into the school to prison pipeline. The purpose of the student government was to show how the democratic process works. What we got was a display of actual tyranny. An unpopular decision that affected the student body, and caused the student government to respond, was met with open refusals, threats, the elimination of a legitimately elected government to be replaced by a puppet government sponsored by moneyed interests. Ex-prisoners, what was the worst thing you saw inside? I spent a couple weeks in county jail. On the first day, when we were all being processed into the facility, we were told very succinctly to never ever even joke about taking your life while in the facility. Kind of like how you just don't say bomb on an airplane anymore. By day 3, I had a good understanding of the other guys I was locked up with. I was physically the biggest of the white guys in our pod, so all the white kids huddled around my table at meals. There was one kid in the group that seemed underdeveloped mentally. He probably had a learning disability among other things, but he essentially acted like a 12-year-old. I knew early on he was going to get himself in trouble because he never stopped talking or moving, and he was rubbing everyone the wrong way. I tried to tell him to chill out and be invisible, but he did not understand what I was telling him. I had been there a week, when the 12-year-old finally lost his cool completely. He was in the shower, singing and joking around, putting on a performance that went too far, and he pooped on the floor as a joke. After the other guys in the shower grabbed their towels and ran, he proceeded to kick the poop all over the walls and into the other shower stalls. It turned into a big scene, and then when the trustees came in to clean up the poop all over the walls, it turned into an even bigger scene. The whole time, the 12-year-old was locked in a cell near the showers, laughing and joking as other inmates had to clean up his poop and make the shower area sanitary again. State-run facilities have standards after all. The next day, everyone was looking at the 12-year-old with hate in their eyes. Everyone missed their showers the day prior due to the poop incident, and then the kid was still up to his antics at breakfast the next day. Everyone got really cold toward him, even openly mean. I'll admit, I started ignoring him completely after the poop. It took him a day or two to realize he was hated by all, and then his personality changed dramatically. He became sad, despondent, and started talking to the COs because the other inmates wouldn't talk to him anymore. He messed up, and told the COs that he should just take his life and make everyone happy, and that was all it took. They dragged out the blue burrito. This is the scariest thing I had seen in jail. The blue burrito was a 10-foot-long blue foam mat. They laid it out on the floor, forced the 12-year-old to lay on the mat, and then they rolled him up with his arms at his sides into the blue burrito. The two long red belts clipped together at the top and bottom of the burrito, keeping it all nice and tight. This was the protocol at the jail. No counseling, no medical ward. You lose the ability to move. They put that poor guy in the burrito around 8 p.m., dragged him into his cell and left him laying on the floor, wrapped up tight, until breakfast the next morning. Around 8 o'clock a male. Imagine being unable to move, barely able to breathe, with no end in sight for 12 hours on the floor of your 8x8 cell. My cell was up above his, and I heard him weeping and moaning in agony all night. He didn't say a word to anyone, or look anyone in the eye for that matter for the rest of the time I was there. One night in the blue burrito broke him.
What's the weirdest thing a guest has done at your house? My friend treated my house like it was his own hotel room. I thought was coming to visit me and we'd coordinate for stuff to do. But it turns out he just wanted to save money on a place to sleep. He had his own plans and didn't tell me about any of them until he got to my place. And he even tried getting his other friends in the area to sleep at my place. I hadn't seen him in years, too, so I was disappointed that I planned my holiday weekend around my friend but he had other plans. It was me. I was visiting my brother and sis-in-law at their fancy new apartment and I took a smelly shit. They had candles in there for just that sort of thing, so I lit two and hung around while the scent worked its magic. Not sure how, but I didn't notice the black smoke coming from the candles was leaving black streaks on the walls. I blew out the candles and tried to clean the walls. TP didn't work, so I used their white fancy towels. It still didn't work, but I ruined those towels trying. Eventually there was no escape but to fess up, so I did and was mortified.
I lied about my friend's last words and I will not honor her last request. My friend Amy passed away a couple of months ago and I was the last one to see her alive. I went over to her apartment, we watched a movie, ate dinner, I left to finish an essay, and then she OD'd and passed away alone. She was 19. Our final conversation was unremarkable. I said it was good to see her, thanked her for the food, we made plans for the sports we were going to play together the following week. I told her I would send her a bread recipe we had talked about. She said she was excited to bake it to bring to a potluck that was coming up. She wished me luck with the essay and I said I would try, but Brian, my roommate, was always loud and distracting, so hopefully I could get it done before he came back from clubbing. She laughed, and the very last thing she said was to say hi to Brian for me. Amy did not answer messages the next day, so I sent her roommate, Kara, a message to ask if everything was okay. Kara had been staying nearby with her boyfriend, so went home to see what was happening, and found Amy's body. She let me know what had happened, and after that there were police and all sorts. It was a shock and confusing, but I did not pry for details. Amy and Kara were incredibly close, practically sisters, so I absolutely did not want to bother her with questions, and the police had investigating to do. I was asked to describe the evening. Amy used substances frequently. They don't think the odd was on purpose, but they wanted to know if she was acting strangely. Had she taken anything while I was there? What time did I leave, etc.? And the death was deemed not suspicious. Amy had not contacted anyone online after I left, so I was the person she last spoke to. Kara asked me what her last words were. I lied. I said it had been to wish me luck with my essay, and that she hoped I had a good night. Amy had always been positive and such a genuinely lovely soul. Well wishes were fitting last words. I did not say anything about saying hi to Brian. Why I lied, Brian can F off. There was a running joke amongst some of my friends about Brian's magical ability to make everything about himself. We wanted to do a little Great British Bake Off for fun. Brian buys a sparkly suit and declares himself Paul Hollywood and yells through the whole thing, "You're doing a painting." Brian can't draw, but until you physically leave he will lecture you about why you're doing it wrong. Never do improv with Brian. It's like improv with Michael Scott. A group of people want to do life drawing. Brian finds a way to be the exposed model. Any birthday features speeches and songs performed by Brian, whether you really know him or not. Someone was going to come out as gay and was planning a little picnic for it. Effing Brian decided to come dressed as a drag queen too. Take the pressure off. Whatever sport or instrument or language you try to learn, Brian will insist he is better, or would be better if he tried to learn it, which he won't. He physically can't stand to not be the center of attention. I do not like Brian. I cannot wait to not live with him anymore. He thinks of himself as charismatic, and at first he truly seems that way, but over time you realize it's all just volume and narcissism. That said, many people do still like him, life of the party and all, while his older friends grow to despise him and gradually exit the group. I was one of the first people to find out that Amy had passed away, and that evening I called my best friend to get it off my chest, and because I needed to vent feelings. Brian heard. I should have been more careful, but I wasn't in my right mind. He asked for more details. Why did he need more details? Because he had already started drafting a mass message to send to all of Amy's friends to let them know that she had passed. Amy and Brian met maybe twice. I told him he couldn't send it. This was on the day I found out. The police were only just involved. We didn't even know if her parents knew yet. He went off on a whole explanation of how he could find them on Facebook and could check land records to find their house and go there in a suit with a bunch of flowers to sit them down and properly inform them. I said the police would tell them, or Kara. As I said, Amy and Kara were close. Kara is from another country, so spends summers with Amy's family, practically like a second daughter. Why on earth would Brian, a total stranger, be a more fitting messenger? He said he had thought that he should get to be the one to tell them. I remember it well because, he said get. For non-native English speakers, you get to be player one, you get to have an extra piece of chocolate cake, you get to dress up, you get to have a little treat that you want, you absolutely do effing not get to tell someone that their daughter has passed. This anti-Brian rant is getting too long. He held off on telling most people until after Amy's parents put out an official statement, though then gloated about having known about the news beforehand. He seemed to think that he would be able to speak at her funeral, but compromised and spoke instead at an informal gathering of friends that we held to honor her. He gave several speeches which, if you weren't aware that the two barely knew each other, would make you think that they were very close. He led a number of vigils, events, gatherings, which yes, were a good mourning opportunity for many people, but I'm too far gone with disliking him that I can't see it as anything other than him trying to gain an ownership of the situation. We put together a fundraiser in Amy's name for a mental health organization she had used, and Brian was upset that he was not listed as a contributor. He did not donate. We had a book where anyone could write about their memories with Amy. Kara wrote a half page, Brian wrote 2.5. I do not like to lie, it make me feel sick to my stomach. A couple of months have passed and the knowledge that I actively lied about Amy's last words is gnawing at me. It's so small and dumb, but I didn't say hi to Brian for her. I said I would. She made her last ever request and I'm denying it. I'm sorry for the paragraphs about what a massive jerk he is, but I hope it demonstrates my point. This is what he is like. This is how he behaved, thinking a mutual friend he'd only met a couple of times had passed. Imagine what he would have been like if he knew that her last words were about him. I confess, channeling my negative feelings into hating how he has turned this into a main character moment has channeled them away from me and the obvious fact that I left her alone to pass away. I think my anger at myself for the lying might be part of the overall guilt I feel about it, but that's what therapy is for. Thank you for reading. I have given this a lot of thought and I'm not going to tell anyone what she said, but I needed to get it out of my brain and into words.
Hack my Instagram account? I will ban and expose you. It's July 1st, 2022. Every year, my family travels up to Adirondack State Park for the July 4th holiday. As always, it's absolute chaos. My mom was packing a cooler in the garage, my dad was running around shirtless, and my sister was helping us pack by texting her friends. I was trying my best, but at that point I was getting tired and going just a little crazy. Somewhere in the chaos, my phone went off. A friend, who we'll call Liv, had messaged me on Instagram. She'd lost her account password and needed help recovering it. Why, if I just clicked on this link and sent her whatever information it spat out, she could get back in. Oh, and they were still in Instagram because they were still logged in on an old phone. Just don't question it, smile. Perhaps the chance to help a friend was simply too alluring. Perhaps the heat and the insanity of travel had taken its toll. Perhaps I'm just an idiot. Whatever the case, I did the unthinkable. I clicked the link they sent. The worst part of it all is that I was this close to realizing that it was all a scam. Before clicking on totalanototrojan.com, I messaged Liv on Discord asking, hey, do you need help with her Instagram? Did I wait for a response from Discord? No, of course not. So, in mere seconds, I was kicked out of my Instagram account, and almost lost my WhatsApp too. Whoops. By the time I realized I'd been duped, by the time the real Liv messaged me back saying that her account had been hacked, it was already far too late. My account had a new password, and there was nothing I could do about it. Or was it? Sitting in the car, ranting via text to my best friend, a realization hit me. Zuckerberg, as part of his whole Meta imitative, had rolled out the Meta Account Center. I had, absent-mindedly, connected my Facebook account. As someone with family members above the age of 50, I was legally required to have one, to my Instagram account. From the account center, you could do many things: sync up your posts, make a fancy friends list, and some other stuff. Most importantly, however, you could change the username and profile pictures on your individual accounts. Sitting in the car, stuck on a 6-hour car ride, a plan slowly came to me. Now, While I was plotting my revenge, the hacker was making some changes. No longer was the account username Faded Thrailfans, it was now Oddly Hacker 190. No longer was the profile picture an image of me, gracefully leaning against a tree. It was now their face, zoomed in at a weird angle, wearing a smug smile. No longer was the account full of posts of me going about my daily life, with one exception, my birthday celebration post. Professionals have standards, I suppose, but of her, at the mall, buying fancy shoes. She started following thousands of other accounts, and even had the nerve to follow my new account and message me, asking for $200 to get the account back. The second I received the message, I knew I had to go through with the plan. You dare message me, gloating, demanding for money? Oh, I don't think so. Logging into Facebook, I was delighted to see my old account still part of the Meta Account Center. The counter-hacking began. First, a little test, opening the account center, I changed the profile picture to a giant red X. The message was simple enough: danger, stay away. Switching over to Instagram, I scrambled to see if it worked. To my utter glee, it worked perfectly. Her smug grin was gone. Showtime. Using the unlimited power of Google, I found a lovely new profile picture for our hacker friend, an advertisement for a lady's private modeling page, with all the boob and butt you could want. A few clicks later, and voila, the account had a new profile picture. If the hack was going to act like a cunt, her profile picture really ought to be one, right? Next up, her username. As a very gay, and very not neurotypical individual, I was more than happy to finally put the slurs I've had hurled at me to good use. A few clicks later, and the account had a new username that was far more fitting. Within an hour, Zuckerberg came crashing down with his ban hammer. This account has been suspected for violating TOS. The best part? Despite the banned account still being linked to my Facebook and new Instagram account, it was the only one removed. What's your secret weapon for comforting your partner when they're distressed? I have a secret way to help my boyfriend when he's struggling mentally. It's important to note that I always encourage him to talk about his problems and offer support and advice when needed. We've been best friends for 11 years and officially together for 2.5, and I love him more than anyone. However, he faces challenges with anxiety, depression, BPD, and mood swings. Sometimes, even when everything is all right or the issue is resolved, he can remain upset for longer periods, like many other people do. This is where my secret weapon comes in. My boyfriend is absolutely passionate about playing Dungeons & Dragons, D&D. It's his #1 hobby, and while I also enjoy it, he has a much greater love for the game. Currently, we're involved in 2 different campaigns, one of which he even DMs, Dungeon Master, meaning he runs the game and knows all the rules. In those moments when he's upset but seemingly open to redirection, I bring up D&D. Sometimes I ask him about certain rules or character ideas, or I inquire about the seasons of Dimension 20, a D&D themed TV show he's watching. I try to choose topics that he can engage in, either by answering a question or sharing his knowledge and experiences. I aim to do this casually, not to make it obvious that I'm changing the subject, but more like, hey, by the way, I've been thinking about _, what are your thoughts on that? And it works like a charm every single time. Without fail. A few weeks ago, I asked him for help with a specific aspect of my character's backstory, not important, but I can explain if needed. He did the typical sniffle, wiped his nose, and immediately shifted his focus to the conversation. Whatever was bothering him before became distant, and he started smiling and laughing. This happens consistently whenever I use this strategy. I can't even recall how I discovered it, it might have been by accident, but I've been using this trick for a year or more. I can't bring myself to tell him about this secret weapon, although I really want to. Part of me wishes he would find it silly and giggle about it. The other reason is that we have a relationship built on transparency, and I seldom keep things from him intentionally. Though I know this is innocent, I'm hesitant to disclose it because I'm afraid it won't work as effectively if he becomes aware of what I'm doing. So, I'm sharing here to get it off my chest and prevent myself from revealing the secret to him, allowing me to continue using it for years to come. Does anyone else have similar strategies? I know it's normal to use humor or lightheartedness to cheer someone up after a stressful situation, but in this case, it's more specifically tailored to his BPD and mood swings. I'm essentially using his special interest to intentionally help him out of his mood swings early on, as these swings can sometimes persist for hours or days without him realizing what I'm doing.
I confided in my best friend about my crush and she betrayed my trust. My best friend Tammy always denied having a crush on our friend Matt, and she also knew that I had feelings for him. I had yearned after him for months. It became really hard to be around the friendship circle. I would have to listen to him talk about the cute girl he went on a date with, the girls in the gym, or his frustration at being unable to find a girlfriend. I was always surprised that he never went for Tammy, as she is his type, but I kept my mouth shut because I wasn't sure if he would ever feel the same way about me, and if he did and we dated, the breakup would wreck our friendship. I couldn't lose him, so I kept my mouth shut. Tammy and I spoke every day. We saw each other all the time and were inseparable. When I started to fancy Matt, I told her how hard I was finding it and what to do. She always asked me what made me think that he liked me, so I would say I just get a vibe from him. Last week he said I look good in blue. We have been friends for years. He had never complimented me like he does now. She would say things like maybe he has grown up, never biased answers, but always a bit too vague and polite. This repetitive does he or doesn't he conversation went on for 6 months until I sat down on Tammy's bed and said that I was going to tell him that evening because it was becoming unbearable. Tammy nodded and said that she would support me. She told me how brave I was and how special I am. I asked her if she would wait in the car while I spoke to Matt and she said she would but that she had to head out around 6:45 p.m. to meet her cousin for dinner. That evening I went over to Matt's house. He was studying alone when I arrived and immediately invited me in. He said he couldn't speak long because he had a date planned that evening and she was arriving at 7 p.m. Swallowing my pride, I confessed how I felt. I waxed lyrical about the way he looked, how much our friendship meant to me but also how I wanted more. His response was kind albeit a bit uncomfortable, and I immediately shriveled up upon realizing the worst-case scenario materialized in the middle of his kitchen. He said he loved me, that I was his closest friend but that he had never considered me romantically because I was like a sister. He hugged me and reassured me that we would still be friends, but told me how he was dating someone else. He was so nice about it, I couldn't be mad. So instead, I hugged him back and walked to the front door. As I swung it open, Tammy stared back at me, dressed to the nines with a full face of makeup. "Tammy?" I stuttered, and quickly spun around and shot Matt a look. Blood flooded my cheeks. I felt like such an idiot. Angrily I asked her, "So I guess that makes Matt your cousin?" When were you going to tell me?" "I have been discussing Matt for months." Tammy looked down and muttered, "I didn't know how to tell you. You were so hung up on him." Mortified, I laughed, and turned to Matt. "Well, aren't you a lucky boy? When were you going to be honest? God, you two deserve each other." I left them both standing like a pair of Greek statues as I stormed over to my car. It wasn't the rejection that hurt me, it was the dishonesty. Tammy had been my confidant and the whole time she had been sleeping with the boy I wanted and didn't have the decency to tell me. Every time I spoke about what he said in class, she had been dating him. Every time I discussed what it must be like to kiss him, she sat silently, secretly indulging in her own experience. I feel so betrayed and led on. How am I meant to be friends with either of them now?
Just a funny prison story. I work at a prison as a nurse and have seen a few things. One of the funniest was responding to a violent altercation on the yard. The victim got beat up a little and poked a few times. The wounds were very minor, like barely deeper than an abrasion, and had stopped bleeding in the less than 5 minutes it took to get him to the infirmary. The victim appeared to be a hardened gangbanger. Tattoos on top of tattoos and several scars. As I'm taking his vitals, he looks at me and seriously asks, "Am I going to make it?" With every single shred of tact I possess, I say to him, "Do you see me worried?" He shakes his head and visibly relaxes. It took everything in me not to laugh at this guy's seriousness. My boyfriend of 7 years doesn't want to marry me because he thinks I'm using him as a visa mule. I, 29F, moved to the US 7 years ago as a graduate school student from Indonesia. I met my boyfriend, and we've been together ever since. My boyfriend is a US citizen. After I graduated, we had a serious discussion about the direction of our relationship. I made it very clear that I wanted to eventually get married and have children. My boyfriend echoed these sentiments. I remember asking him if he saw that happening with me because I didn't want to be in a relationship with no future. He told me he loved me and that we were definitely headed in that direction. As of last week, we've been dating for 7 years. We've occasionally talked about marriage, but we were both busy with our respective careers, so the timing didn't seem quite right. However, recently my company announced that there's a chance that my department's work will be outsourced. I'm on an H-1B visa, in case you didn't know. It's a non-immigrant visa that allows us companies to employ foreign workers in specialty occupations. This means that I need to start looking for a job as soon as possible if I want to continue staying in the US. Last week during our anniversary, I brought this up. I asked him if he thought it was the right time to consider getting married, as that would also help with sorting out my visa issues. He looked like he was about to vomit. After much prodding, he confessed that he hadn't been planning for us to get married until I could obtain residency in the US on my own. I was incredibly confused because he had never mentioned this before. His reason was that he didn't want to be used as a visa mule by me, and that he wanted to ensure that I married him because I loved him, not just as a means to stay in the US, which can only happen when I obtain a green card. It took me a while to process what he said, and I asked him if he would be okay moving to Indonesia with me, to which he expressed reluctance. I did not react well and ended up leaving because I couldn't deal with what had just happened. I am still in disbelief. I started dating him because he was the kindest, most thoughtful, and generous man I've ever met. I now feel like I wasted 7 years. While the visa issues are certainly a problem, I did not date him with the intention of making him my safety net. I cannot believe that even after nearly a decade together, he doesn't know what kind of person I am. I feel like this relationship is possibly over, and it hurts. It hurts so much. Update 1. Before I get to the update, I would like to address some comments. Getting permanent residency in the US is not easy. I know people who've been here for 15 plus years who are still waiting for their chance at permanent residency. For those of you who called me a gold digger, you guys made me laugh. I'm aware of the legalities around sponsoring a spouse for permanent residency, including the financial aspect. It shouldn't have been a problem for the following reasons. I'm a STEM major who recently shifted into management, and I work for a large company and do quite well for myself. My boyfriend is a teacher and our incomes are not comparable. He earns around 60K while I earn close to 300K, and we've been living together for 6 years. We have a shared account to pay for expenses like rent and utilities, into which we both deposit a percentage of our salary. The rest of our money goes into our private accounts, and we don't manage each other's money. Because I'm pretty frugal, I've saved up quite a bit of money in the form of savings and investments. If my boyfriend was worried about the legality of sponsoring me financially for 10 plus years, I would have happily discussed moving the money around. I was even considering buying a house so we could have made that a joint ownership thing. The point is, we could have figured it out. I haven't relied relied on him financially ever, and I didn't intend on doing that in the future. Now for the actual update. He is now my ex-boyfriend. I took a few days to collect myself and then reached out to him wanting to talk. He agreed. It turns out that he has been insecure about earning less than I have for a while. Apparently his friends have been poking fun at a relationship, calling me the sugar mommy because I take care of most of the expenses. He never told me this until now. He apparently didn't feel like an equal because our pay differed so much, and started feeling that I was only with him as a quick way to get permanent residency here. I was speechless. I couldn't believe that his friends gaslighted him into doubting our relationship. I reminded him of how he had supported me when I was in grad school, like getting me groceries when I had little money to spare, allowing me to stay with him rent-free in my last year of grad school to help me minimize expenses so I didn't have to take out a loan, and letting me use his car when I was attending interviews. I told him that he did those things because he loved me, and me taking on the majority of household expenses since I started working as my way of paying him back for all the things he did for me back then. He said that he gets what I'm saying, but also that he didn't expect me to start earning more than him straight off the bat. I asked if there was any chance he considered going to couples therapy, and he declined because he didn't think he was being unreasonable. He said that he wanted to be the provider in a relationship and that he didn't feel like one in ours. So there's no going back from this unless I quit my job and found another that paid substantially less, which isn't going to happen. Well, long story short, we broke up. His family is in disbelief because they were hoping that he would propose soon, and I've moved into an Airbnb for now. A little bit of good news to end this update with. My company offered me a similar role in a different department. However, this is based out of France, and there's a small decrease in pay. I've always dreamed of living in Europe, and I've accepted this offer. I've signed a relocation agreement, and I'll move there in the next 8 to 12 weeks. So I'm excited to start this next chapter of my life. I think my husband had an affair while I was in a psych ward. Last year the business me and my husband owned went under, and it was a huge strain on our relationship and also on my mental health. This year in February, I signed myself into the hospital for depression. In March, I had a breakdown, but didn't want to go to the hospital, so he signed me in as a 302, non-voluntary harm to self or others, and then proceeded to get psychological first aid and included the children. I've heard from my kids that he tried to brainwash them into thinking I was an evil woman who was out to hurt them and is dangerous. I had no support in the hospital and had nowhere to go when I got out. Luckily my brother and sister-in-law took me in. They have kids too and knew that I was not a threat to my own or theirs. While we were waiting for the PFA hearing, my husband had a babysitter, 14F, come help him with the kids. I was upset at just the thought, but was ready to get over it until the hearing happened and it was decided unfounded and I was allowed full access to my home and my children immediately. I stayed at a friend's house for a few days after making sure to spend time with my kids, but I wasn't ready to talk to my husband because I felt like he just threw me away when I needed him most. When I finally did come home, I found her clothes in my laundry and asked him about it. It turns out she stayed there with them for 3 days. Then I found her hair in my bed and he admitted that she slept in the bed. He insisted he slept on the couch. He also took her and my kids out to dinner and on a shopping spree at the toy store. We have been trying not to spend money lately since the business went under. I feel like he made a great memory for the kids with her as a fill-in. What's the best bedroom experience you've ever had? I was day tripping to Vancouver from Seattle and stopped in for lunch at a little cafe. From my window I saw a young teenage girl out in the cold, squatted down in a closed-up business's doorway, holding a small bundle in her arms. She was panhandling, people were mostly walking by ignoring her. She looked just broken. I finished up my meal and went outside, went through my wallet and thought I'd give her $5 for some food. I got up to her and she was sobbing. She looked like she was 14. And that bundle in her arms was a baby wrapped up. I felt like I just got punched in the chest. She looked up putting on a game face and asked for any change. I asked her if she'd like some lunch. Right next door was a small quick trip type grocery store. I got a can of formula for the baby, very young, maybe 3 months old, and took her back to the cafe though I'd just eaten. She was very thankful, got a burger and just inhaled it. Got her some pie and ice cream. She opened up and we talked. She was 15, got pregnant, parents were angry and she was fighting with them. She ran away. She's been gone almost 1 full year. I asked her if she'd like to go home and she got silent. I coaxed her, she said her parents wouldn't want her back. I coaxed further, she admitted she stole $5,000 in cash from her dad. Turns out $5,000 doesn't last long at all and the streets are tough on a 15-year-old. Very tough. She did want to go back, but she was afraid no one wanted her back after what she did. We talked more. I wanted her to use my phone to call home but she wouldn't. I told her I'd call and see if her folks wanted to talk to her. She hesitated and gave bad excuses but eventually agreed. She dialed the number and I took the phone. Her mom picked up and I said hello. Awkwardly introduced myself and said her daughter would like to speak to her. Silence, and I heard crying. Gave the phone to the girl and she was just quiet listening to her mom cry, and then said hello. And she cried. They talked, she gave the phone back to me, I talked to her mom some more. I drove her down to the bus station and bought her a bus ticket home. Gave her $100 cash for incidentals, and some formula, diapers, wipes, snacks for the road. Got to the bus, and she just cried saying thank you over and over. I gave her a kiss on the forehead and a hug, kissed her baby, and she got on the bus. I get a Christmas card every year from her. She's 21 now and in college. Her name is Michaela and her baby is Joe. A fine young lady she has turned out to be. One night she came over for some drinks, and one thing led to another, and let's just say Joe has a little sister. It was awesome. She really expressed her gratitude for the help all those years ago at that moment. My crazy ex-girlfriend wouldn't leave me alone. 5 years ago I started dating my now ex, let's call her Lily. We were together for almost 3 years when I was approached about her cheating. Sadly, this wasn't the first time. In the 3 years we were together, she constantly would end up in a bad situation where it was always someone else that kissed her or pushed her into doing something. She also alleged being roped multiple times. She wouldn't report it, and for half of the other incidents she'd stay in contact with those people. I was young and wanted to believe her side of these situations so I could keep my future together. We officially broke up after I had a friend of Lily's message me that they had been dating for the last 3 months. Lily denied everything, even when I received a video of her telling this girl that she wasn't dating me. She spent the next week gaslighting me, trying to paint herself as the victim. She eventually moved and we had on and off contact. At the time I was still in love with her and was trying to not believe she had cheated. Over the next few months we reconnected and even slept together a few times. We were both also having casual intimacy with other people. Lily had started seeing another girl before we reconnected but told me she had ended it due to the girl being under 18. After getting back together, Lily's and my relationship was on and off. We were good for a few weeks and then she lied and we'd fight. After that we lost most contact. At one point she threatened my best friend and myself because she was thinking of moving back. This is also where I found out she had slept with another friend of ours. We cut contact for a few months when she started wanting to act like friends again. A friend of mine asked if I'd seen a post of Lily's about her new girl. The friend showed me and lo and behold, it was the girl she had started seeing after our original breakup. When I looked at her page more, she had a date with a heart. It was from when she had told me they broke up. The friend let me look at her Insta and she had posts going back 2 years with this girl. I don't use socials a lot, especially since the breakup, so I hadn't pushed to be unblocked, and now I feel like I just let her do this. Either way, I played into her about being friends and we set up a date for me to drop some old stuff of hers off. When I confronted her about the whole thing, she denied it for 5 minutes and then slowly started changing the facts until she admitted they were engaged and accused me of trying to ruin it. By the end of the conversation she was calling me crazy and saying that no one would believe me. She got out of the car threatening to throw something of mine into someone's fenced yard. At first I followed but realized it was just another game she likes to play, so I got back in and left her stranded. She called and threatened me but hung up after I called her out for doing the deed with a under 18. I then blocked her number. Her best friend then tried to threaten me over Facebook. I replied, let her read it, and blocked her as well. I had contacted the girlfriend too, but she sent me a huge text saying Lily wouldn't cheat and I need to keep my mouth shut, so I sent her some evidence. Artists, what would you paint if given complete artistic freedom and your desired price? I am a struggling artist, never having had any kind of success or even fame of any kind. I do it because I love to paint, but I'm just not great enough to get there. I was contacted by an art collector. His name is John Streel. He owns several hotels around the world. I have admired his art collection for a long time. It is very modern and edgy. My type of thing. I have never been able to afford any of his work though. Anyway, I got an email from his personal assistant yesterday asking for my availability for a meeting for 2 days' time. She told me that as long as my paintings fit in Mr. Story's private art space and are not too crude, I can have any price I like for whatever I paint. On the day I met with his PA, who I actually knew from my time studying art in the city, and went to his home. He has an obscene amount of rooms within his house all filled with my kind of art. All of the work was his and he had painted it himself. He said he has no ability. We sat and chatted and then he showed me around. He has different themes in each room and has described them. One room is a dark forest with wolves and eagles, another a deep abyss with holes and torture. I tried not to show my excitement. I was getting to paint in whatever my mind imagined and had my own choice of price. I was also very worried about meeting his expectations. He was a mild-mannered guy but seemed like he had high standards. He took me through each room and told me what the themes are and then asked me what I would like to paint. My mind went blank. I had never been in this position before with such little pressure. I have never had a chance to paint with no concern for price or commercial success or my reputation. I have just been painting whatever I like as cheaply as I could for my local art community. I told him I needed time to think about it and asked if I could also come and bring my current work so I could get a feel for what works for him and what doesn't. They gave me a few days to come back with some sketches and then we would start the painting. I am super excited and scared to death at the same time. They have given me an entire month to paint and then a full year's residency in that house to continue with other paintings if he likes this first one. My heart is racing and I have a headache. I would love to hear anyone's input.
What is the coolest website you've visited that no one knows about? ThisPersonDoesNotExist.com shows you a computer-generated image of a person every time you refresh. Sometimes there are some weird artifacts in the images but often they look very real. Temp Mail. This website instantly gives you a new, unused email. SurveySenpai.com. Essentially you get paid to complete surveys. When we were in school my friends and I would spend 15 minutes a day doing all the surveys and we made a few $100s a month. Z-Library. You can download almost any ebook ever for free. PresidentialHam.com. My high school substitute son is an artist who painted each US president holding a ham. I have no idea why, but I go there sometimes for a laugh. FutureMe.org. It allows you to send an email to your future self. I tried it in 2015 and received the mail in 2018. Kind of like a time capsule. SleepyT.me. It's a website that calculates when you should fall asleep in order to not wake up groggy since the human body works in sleep cycles. Best similar. You watched a movie that you loved? With this website you can input a film and it'll give you similar ones. BoredButton.com. This is the bored button. Pretty much you click the button and it sends you to a completely random website on the internet. You could get lost in a clicking loop for hours. Used to do it all the time in school. 12feet.io. It bypasses all paywalls and removes all ads from any webpage I have found. Show me a 10 feet paywall, I'll show you a 12 feet ladder. No install, just copy and paste your link. Everynoise.com. This website contains every obscure subgenre of music imaginable. You can find some great music you've never heard of there. HaveIBeenPwned.com allows you to see if your online accounts have been released in a data breach. You can also get email alerts if you've been in a breach. OldGamesDownload.com. Download and play the games from the early 90s and 2000s on your Windows machine. I personally play NFSMW 2005 and Counter-Strike. Brings back lot of memories.
I'm tired of everything about my ADHD boyfriend. He has to have everything his way, like I can't even have bananas. I, 25, recently found out I was pregnant with my partner Lyle's, 26, baby. We've been together for 3 years and we live together. Lyle has ADHD, which he refuses to get treatment or medication for. He's pretty normal about 85% of the time, so I haven't really pushed it. One thing that really affects him though is sensory problems. He has a few, but the biggest one is bananas. He cannot stand the smell of a banana or the taste of banana. He's accidentally eaten something with banana before and ran to the bathroom like a child to throw it up. If we are somewhere and someone is eating a banana, he will claim that he can smell it in the room and make us move with the threat that he will get sick. If we don't move, he will start gagging, make himself throw up, and I've seen him start shaking too. This has happened in public before and it's extremely embarrassing. I was really tired, pregnant, and hormonal yesterday, and while I was watching my show I had a craving for a banana, which I normally avoid when around Lyle, but pregnancy cravings are just too strong to resist. He was going to get groceries from work, so I called and asked him to get me some bananas because I was having a craving. He started begging me before he even got them to not eat them in the house, and I just got fed up and told him no, that I was carrying around his child, and the least he could do about it since he's not the one having to nurture the damn thing in his stomach was get me a banana. I'd read online that this was probably the baby's way of telling me it's deficient in potassium, and that all I could really stand to eat at this point was the damn banana, and I don't want to deprive it of what it needs. He argued back and forth asking me to go eat it outside at least, and out of frustration I just started crying, which made me feel embarrassed. He finally gave in to calm me down and brought it home. I'll admit, I was still really mad and upset from our argument on the phone when he came home, and I in that moment couldn't face getting up and going to the kitchen. When he came into the living room and sat on the couch, I asked him to peel it, cut it, and bring it to me. I really didn't think that was a big deal, but he blew up at me and told me that I knew it made him sick to even smell or touch. I told him that plenty of people have foods they don't like, and he either needs to grow up or seek help for his illness because he's acting like a child and his problem with bananas is completely abnormal. We argued a bit more, and he finally got up, yelled that he was tired of my bull, and left the house. He hasn't been back yet. I get his issues are a sensitive topic for him, and when I was talking to my friend about it, she said she had an autistic sister and what I did was a bit messed up. I think they're all just sensitive.
Redditors, what is the most messed up thing you have ever done? When I was married, my ex-wife and I went to a bar with a couple friends. They were more her friends than mine. The wife of the couple made it clear she didn't like me and spent the evening taking as many shots at me as possible. As she got drunker, the insults became more frequent and meaner. My attempts to fire back were stopped by her husband and my ex-wife. I was expected to take it but not give it. She went to the restroom, and as she got off her chair, the leg broke and she face planted. Ex-wife and Beach went to the restroom. Husband of the Beach went to find the manager. I swapped chairs with the table next to ours, and told the manager that the injury, a broken nose, wasn't due to a broken chair, but because she was drunk and fell over.
Your date is a 10, but she has one thing you don't like that is enough to make you lose interest/walk away. What would that thing be? She'd be perfect for me, but she'd have school full time, which is a bit of a turn off for me I think since I work nights. Edit, I think I read the title.
I'm painfully aware that my parents do have a favorite, and it's not me. I've been living with this burden for as long as I remember, the knowledge that I am not my parents' favorite child. It's like a constant ache, a gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach that never goes away, and it's not because I'm the black sheep of the family, or because I've made poor life choices, it's just because they have a clear preference for my sibling. Growing up, it was evident in every little thing they did, from the way they praised my sibling for even the smallest achievements, while barely acknowledging mine, to how they always took their side in any argument, even when my sibling was in the wrong. I felt like I was constantly trying to win their approval, but no matter what I did, it was never enough. It's not like I don't love my sibling, I do, but the constant comparison and favoritism that I experienced throughout our childhood made me resentful and bitter at times. And it's not just my parents, my relatives and family friends all seem to adore my sibling more than me, and it hurts. I thought things would change as we grew older, but the favoritism has only become more apparent. While my sibling has gone on to achieve great things in their career and personal life, I feel like I'm stuck in a rut, unable to break free from the shadow of their success. Even my own accomplishments are dismissed or played down, while my sibling is constantly celebrated and praised. It's a lonely feeling, knowing that your own family doesn't value you as much as they do your sibling. But recently, something happened that shook me to my core. I stumbled upon a folder on my parents' computer, one that I wasn't meant to see. It was filled with pictures and videos of my sibling, doing things that no sibling should ever see. It was like a punch to the gut, realizing that my siblings' success and favoritism came at such a dark and twisted cost. I was filled with a mix of emotions, anger, betrayal, and a deep sense of injustice. I had been living with this burden for so long, and now I finally had the proof of what I had always suspected. I don't know what to do with this information. Part of me wants to confront my parents and expose the truth to everyone, to finally get the recognition and love that I deserve. But another part of me is scared of the consequences, scared of how things will change, scared of what my sibling will do. I'm stuck in a web of secrets and lies, unsure of how to move forward. But one thing is for sure, my whole perception of my family and my place in it has been shattered. I'm painfully aware that I may never get the recognition and love that I deserve from my family. But one thing I do know is that I will no longer be silenced. I'm ready to fight for what's right, and to finally break free from the chains of favoritism and injustice. I'm ready to take back my power and reclaim my place in the family.
The entitled legacy students at my college all share one trick. I finally learned it and now I'm making fat stacks. Students at my school are gonna put you in jail because of this well-kept secret they all hid. Our court system is one big lie. Chances are, you're probably much smarter than your lawyer. They just have a paper to show they listened. I had an honest academic career, some might say too honest, and yet I still came in last compared to every other student. I watched all these other people practically sleep in frats while I kept my head down in the library just to get lower grades than them because of their secret trick. For all 4 years I had zero clue what they did. Initially I thought that maybe it was a legacy thing and they were tipping off professors or making big donations. But that wasn't even the case. The kids' parents bunkered down on them and were all helicopter parents. There was no chance they were paying off the professors. I was keeping afloat for those first years of law school and I had a good thing going. However, my senior year was kicking me in the butt. I had tried to follow my previous study methods and personalized schedule, but I took on way more than I could handle in my final year. I thought I was going to be fine and I was up for the challenge because I wanted to make sure I was going to get into a master's program, but this was my worst mistake. I figured out way too early that I couldn't do it all. At the start of the semester, I could have never guessed things would get so bad that my GPA would fall down to a pitiful 2.5. All the other students seemed so confident, so focused, yet nonchalant. Meanwhile, I was drowning in my overwhelming new workload. Before I had time to catch my breath, I was damn near failing all my classes, and it was taking a toll on not only my mental health but my health too. I was doing everything I could to try and pull my pathetic grades up. All-nighters back to back, Red Bulls to keep me alert in class, studying in the library for 8 hours straight. I had never worked harder, yet my grades had never been lower. I started to lose hope completely. The more I tried to catch up, the further I fell behind. For every single test I took, I was the last person left by the end of the class. It was humiliating. It broke my spirit a little more each time I found myself sitting there all alone, watching the professor sigh and check their watch. I had gray, drooping bags under my eyes, and my appetite was suffering, so I started thinning out. I had never looked or felt worse in my life, but what could I do? Give it all up now? It wasn't an option, but this degree was going to kill me if I didn't manage to break into whatever superhuman mindset these other students around me seemed to have. Everything came crumbling down one afternoon after I got my third D in one of my most challenging classes. That grade was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I just came apart when I saw that I had failed yet another huge test. I walked out of the library, slumped down onto a bench outside, and started crying. All the pain and stress I had been carrying since the semester started just poured out of me. I couldn't carry it anymore. And then, I was approached by an angel. I'm not a religious man to any degree, but I will always see that random stranger as my one guardian angel since she changed my life so severely. I was sobbing with my face in my hands, ignorant to anyone watching a grown man cry, when I heard a soft, "You okay?" I opened my eyes to see a gorgeous girl looking at me with concern. I wiped my eyes, snorted and mumbled out an unconvincing "I'm fine." That's when she sat down right next to me and said, "It's your grades, isn't it? When someone's crying around here, that's usually it." She got a chuckle out of me with that and then said she was going to let me in on the little secret that was going on around here. That's when she asked for my laptop, and I gave it to her, dumbly. I watched her open Chrome and search StudyBuddy before returning it to me. She told me the extension was the only reason the other students had straight A's since it gave them immediate answers to their assignments, and the top 10 abused it relentlessly. After she walked away, I took a better look at the extension and its features. I went home that night and thought about using the extension. I had been apprehensive at first since I was putting everything on the line if I got caught cheating, but I knew that if I didn't do this I would be kicked out and would never get into my master's. After using it to complete my homework that first night, by the time I was done, I could have picked my jaw up off the floor over how shocked I was at the difference it made. My nightly homework routine consisted of tears and typing, spanning about 4 to 5 hours every night, more if I had a project due that week. But that night, I ran all my assignments through StudyBuddy and was done in an hour. It was a total miracle to me. I remember getting the best sleep I've had in months because I finished my homework so early into the night. I had completely forgotten about how refreshing it felt to get a full 8 hours of sleep. The following week was as different as night and day compared to the stressful start of the semester. I used StudyBuddy for all my homework and projects, and it gave me hours of free time and stress relief that I hadn't experienced since starting the semester. All my worrying and all mental pain just vanished because of one mysterious girl's advice. In a week's time, I had brought up every single one of my grades from near failing to a perfect A. I stopped dreading test days since I could just have study buddy take them for me, and all I had to do was show up to class. Everyone's laid-back attitude started to make sense to me. This was the mystery that was going on at my school, and I had finally been let in on it. Since I could use study buddy for all of my busy work, I started directing most of my focus toward my most challenging classes. Without all the time and energy cleared up for me by study buddy, I surely would have miserably failed my most challenging classes within the first half of the semester. After chatting with some other students, I learned this was how most of them chose to study. Being able to dismiss nightly homework deadlines or any menial quizzes with one easy click saved me loads of stress and time. After all my school stress was lifted off me with one excellent recommendation, I started to use my free time to improve myself. At my worst, I didn't realize that fixing my grades would end up fixing me as a person. After my grades stabilized, I started to feel like myself again, and I thought about how much that random girl had utterly changed my life for the better. I started going to the gym and had more time to make friends around campus. I gained all the weight I had lost back, plus some extra muscle, and noticed girls checking me out more often. My self-esteem shot up with my grades, and soon enough I became part of a great friend group. It meant the world to have friends that understood all my academic struggles, and we were constantly sharing study hacks. As I branched out socially, I learned that nearly the entire student body all had their own form of AI cheating software. I was just lucky enough to find one that worked with Canvas, and just in time before I had tanked my grades any further. By the end of the year, my GPA was a gleaming 3.7, and I was overjoyed but not surprised when I got into my top choice for my master's. I remember scanning the crowd at my graduation, trying to find the girl who had basically solidified my successful future, all because my life. She took the time to introduce me to Study Buddy. I never saw her again, but I hope to run into her again one day, by some miracle, so I can finally thank her for the overwhelming impact her small act of kindness had on. My boyfriend and I got into a huge fight and he wants us to go on Judge Judy about it. Please help. For context, my boyfriend and I work in two completely different fields, and I make about 80% more than him. He currently works as a manager at a coffee shop, and I work at a hedge fund. I recognize that I'm privileged since I have had this job since I was 19 when my dad put a good word in for me. I met my boyfriend because I was a regular at his store, and I asked him out after flirting for a few weeks. Now we've been dating for about a year, and recently he moved into my apartment. I live in a very nice building, but the rent is on the higher side. My boyfriend was the one who wanted to move into my place when we decided to live together. I tried to tell him maybe we should get a more affordable place together, but he insisted he wanted to share my nice apartment. I put my foot down before he officially moved in, and I told him that if we were going to take this next step in our relationship, then we had to split all expenses 50-50. Before he moved in, I had been paying for the majority of our dates and I didn't want him to think that he could move in and start mooching off me. He agreed to our financial arrangement and picked up more hours at work, even though it definitely affected his daily energy level. I have tried to motivate him to go back to school. Ironically, I've even offered to pay for him to go to college. But all he says is that he's too embarrassed to return to school in his 30s. Anyways, we've been living together for a couple of months now and things have just recently gotten tense and uncomfortable around the subject of money. My boyfriend came home crying the other day after a particularly stressful shift, and after I calmed him down he asked if we could switch to paying the bills 60-40 instead of down the middle. I felt bad since he was already in such a hard place, but I had set this precedent before he moved in and I wasn't about to change it. I told him I understood he was working extra hard, but I needed to keep things separate and equal. After I said this, it was like a switch flipped and I saw a side of him that I never had before. He got up from the couch and started yelling at me for being a rich bitch and accusing me of forcing him to work like a dog for my own selfish reasons. This made me furious, and I was upset that he had agreed to split bills initially before moving in. It was literally my only term when he asked to move into my place. I yelled back at him and said I was entitled to my own money, and reminded him that he wanted this. We went back and forth before he ended up storming off to bed. He ignored me for the entire day after and we didn't speak till last night. He seemed weirdly calm when he sat me down, and was holding a piece of paper as well. The vibe was weird and unexpected, and I could have never guessed where he was going with all this. He started the conversation first by saying he was sorry things got heated, but he still wanted to split 60-40. Before I could respond, he shoved the paper in my hand and told me he had found a fresh way for us to handle our conflict. It turns out my idiot boyfriend had submitted an application to Judge Judy about our issue, and they had accepted and invited us to come on. I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen a grown man do. But he asked me to take a day to consider it, and even though it was unconventional, it might just help us resolve things. Now I'm torn between taking up the offer to go on the show just to watch Judge Judy humiliate him, or dumping all his poop outside tomorrow night and kicking him the hell out of my place. What would you do?
I smacked a spoiled brat because she ruined my sick nephew's life. Am I the jerk for smashing a little girl's face in cake? Yesterday we had a delayed birthday party for my nephew, 8, as he had his appendix removed during his birthday. The last 2 years it was immediate family only. This year we went all out. We got the bouncy castle, a chocolate fountain, booked tickets for go-karts for next weekend, a big cake with different marzipan roses and plant leaves molded in chocolate from different trees. He is very interested in botany and insects. The cupcakes also had different flowers, leaves and insects on them. This cost my sister a lot as they were painstakingly made due to the details. My brother-in-law's friend is married to a woman that is a bit special. They have a 10-year-old daughter, Megan, together known as their rainbow baby as she was born after 2 IVF rounds, 4 miscarriages and 1 stillbirth. She will gladly tell everyone about her health, journey to conception and miracle baby even if you try to shut her up. She wore a cream-colored dress at my sister's wedding, upstaged another friend of hers proposal by announcing her pregnancy. When her own sister-in-law graduated she faked being ill as she has only gone as far as college and not beyond and couldn't take the attention her sister-in-law was getting. She fakes fainting spells when she doesn't get the attention she needs. Her daughter does the same. She will fake a seizure when the conversation topic moves on from her etc. At the party I was in charge of food and I set up the cakes, cupcakes and other refreshments in the front room as there would be lots of children running around and we didn't want grubby hands all over them before my nephew blew out the candles. Megan kept disturbing me going in and out of the room and her mother egged her on. She asked if she could take pictures of Megan eating a cupcake and then they would join the others in the garden. I said no and locked the door after I had set everything up and put the key in my bag. After about an hour or so of games people started to move towards the table area and my sister asked me to go get the candles and cake ready. Megan ran ahead of me and as I entered the hallway she unlocked the door which to me was a surprise as the key should have been in my bag. Her mother was almost shoulder to shoulder with me when Megan dipped her nose and cheeks in the cake and had this deranged trying to be cute smile on her face. She picked one of the flowers of the cake and ate it. Her mother cheered her on and took a picture before I could react, saying that the first pick of the flowers was hers anyway for being special. A few more people were in the hallway at this point including my nephew and sister. He didn't look happy. I don't know what came over me, but I walked up to Megan and smashed her head into the cake. The aftermath was not pretty. Her mother started screeching which brought more people into the small hallway and the front room. Megan started crying and her father threatened to do some not so nice things to me before my brother-in-law managed to interfere. He had to literally drag him out of the house. Some people in the crowd laughed, others stayed quiet. Then those who missed it asked questions and I explained what happened. Megan and her mother who were still in the room tried to justify their actions even saying that I was the one that ruined the cake. Others sided with me that nobody wanted to eat a cake with Megan Boggers. In the end they left. My sister has cancelled Megan and her family's go-kart tickets. She also billed Megan's mother for the cake. Megan's mother forwarded the bill to me via a WhatsApp message and I refused to pay for it. She said what her daughter did was fixable, but how I reacted was not. She also billed me for Megan's dress dry cleaning. I have no intention of paying that either. There has been quite a commotion on Facebook and WhatsApp groups as my sister is threatening with small claims court.
What are some common signs that someone grew up with shitty parents? When they think they always cause problems for others and when they are emotionally and socially closed off so it's very hard for them to be more sociable, etc. They tell traumatized stories and think they are happy memories. They are always trying to figure out what they did wrong and what they're supposed to be doing and how, while editing their own thoughts and feeling vaguely bad. Control freak. They grew up in chaos, alcoholism, gambling, foreclosure, and are obsessed with averting some unforeseen disaster. They're completely unwilling to open up and share anything because in their experience it will always be used against them. Doesn't talk about their interests because parents have never showed interest, belittled them. They don't understand simple gestures of kindness. They don't form attachments to others. They grew up in an environment where such attachments were a negative and or resulted in negative outcomes.
My nerdy hobby saved my life. Live-action role-playing, also known as LARPing, has been my thing since I was 14, and after I got a good paying job, I started going all out for my hobby. One thing I spent a good chunk of money on was my character's armor. The armor was chainmail, and I thought it was the coolest thing I owned. After the meeting with my group, I changed out of most of my LARP gear because I didn't want to stand out while walking through a sketchy part of Cologne, called Cologne Mulheim, dressed like a medieval knight. But I couldn't fit everything in my bag, so I kept on my chainmail, along with my tunic and pants. On the bus ride back, I noticed a guy looking at me a lot, but I figured it was just because I still looked pretty unusual. When he got off at the same stop as me, I didn't think much of it. I was almost at my friend's place when I called him to see if he wanted to grab a doner, a kind of food. He agreed, and I was waiting for him at our meeting spot. That's when I saw the same guy from the bus walking straight toward me. I tried to make space by getting closer to the wall, but he didn't walk past. He stopped right in front of me and pulled out a knife, telling me to give him my bag, wallet, and phone. I was okay with giving him my wallet, but I also tried to explain that the bag had only armor and foam weapons, not much value. But just talking seemed to make him angry, and suddenly I felt two quick, painful punches to my stomach. It hurt so bad that I fell down, and he grabbed my bag. Honestly, after that, everything is a blur. I could barely think except for the voice in my head shouting "You got stabbed." The next thing I knew, my friend was shaking me. My bag was open and my things were scattered around. He was holding my helmet with blood on it. He said he saw the guy throwing my stuff around when the bag was too heavy for him, and my friend grabbed the first thing he could, my helmet, and hit the guy with it until he ran away. Later on, we checked my stomach. Despite having two huge, dark bruises that hurt a lot, I only had small cuts. The chainmail had stopped the knife. Even now, thinking back to that day makes me feel queasy. It's crazy to think that if I hadn't been wearing a piece of my LARP gear, I would have died. All over a bag of costumes, 150 euros in my wallet, and a 10-year-old phone. Thank God for me being a huge nerd.
Have you ever had a job where you did nothing for years and nobody found out? I don't know if this qualifies as nobody finding out that I did nothing on the job, but it was certainly the easiest work I ever got paid to do. I worked as a home health aide before becoming a nurse. I got assigned to be an overnight assistant to a little old lady who had round-the-clock care. Before my first shift, I went to her home to meet her and she was very pleasant. The current aide explained that this lady needed assistance to get up from a seated or lying position but could walk independently. She also was not able to reach, lift, bend etc., so cooking, cleaning, and fetching things were tasks I should be prepared for. Sounded like typical home care duties and the lady seemed sweet. My first shift was in October from 10 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. Every night I went into her home and she was already in bed. The house was immaculately clean. The lady slept through the night and never rang her little bell for the bathroom. I tapped on her bedroom door a few times early on just to check on her, but she always assured me she was fine and she eventually sent word to my agency that she'd prefer I just peek in to check on her rather than knocking and waking her. She also assured me, through the agency, that her day aide would leave a note if there were any housekeeping tasks for me. That was in mid-November, about 5 weeks into the job. Fast forward to the following May. I had literally spent 6 months sitting in this lady's living room watching TV or reading. In that 6 months there had been one time that I found a teacup on the drain rack and put it away. Another time, I folded a little blanket that was sort of mussed up on the couch. On this May morning, she rang her bell for the first time. I was startled and rushed to her room. She asked for a warm wet washcloth to wash her face, but didn't want or need anything else. I took the opportunity to make sure she was comfortable calling me since I'm male and had considered that she might not be calling for help for that reason. She assured me that wasn't an issue and that she seldom woke up through the night. I did not speak to her again until the week before Christmas when she asked me to come to work early one night. She had a little snack, cookies, and a gift card for me. At that point, I had been spending 40 hours a week in her home and was just now having my third conversation ever with her. I stayed on that job until I relocated for nursing school and never had any occasion to provide care or even substantive housekeeping tasks. I just sat there 5 nights a week and got paid for it for slightly 2 years. Easiest money I've ever made in my life looking after a sweet little old lady, while also providing me so-called experience for future jobs.
Want us to carry the project? Have fun getting embarrassed in class. Final year of university, I'm in a literature class. I really need to pass with flying colors. The time comes to do group projects, and imagine my dismay when the girl I affectionately refer to as Airhead is in our group. Airhead spent most of her tutorial lessons on her laptop adding clothes to her wish list, and whenever questioned about something, would say I don't know, in a very cutesy way to suggest she could get off the hook. When we did writing homework, she copy and pasted hers from fanfiction websites. We get given quite a big book to study, and I'm very sure Airhead isn't going to read it. In our group meeting she pretty much says I'm terrible at group stuff, I'm gonna let you lead and do a lot of the creative work. Just let me do what the book's definition is, and you can talk about the themes. I know Airhead is going to just get a synopsis of the book from somewhere, and sure enough, when she sends through the details, it matches to a book review on the first result of Google. Nothing changed. Feeling petty because I needed those grades and worked damn hard, I hit up my English tutor who had been starting to hump me and Airhead together, assuming I was also lazy. I let him know that Airhead was using stolen material, hadn't read the book at all, and could me and my other group members be marked separately. Delightedly, he agreed. The day of the presentation Airhead introduces the book and my teacher listens to her massively stolen speech. Afterwards, just before she passes the info on to me, he suddenly begins to quiz her on the book. On the messages. On the theme. On the side characters. Watching her face change as she at first looked to me to answer it and then the teacher looked to her to make sure she was answering it was priceless. Airhead later lamented to me she had no idea why she failed the class when the rest of us passed. My dad disowned me after my ex-boyfriend lied about me cheating, now he's begging to reconcile. I, 21 male, am a bisexual, very effeminate looking man, to the point where it is an odd day if I am not mistaken for being a female. I lived with my dad, 48 male, for my entire life due to my mom dying from complications of childbirth. We were each other's best friend from day one, and when I came out to him as bisexual as a 16-year-old, he came out to me right back as a bisexual man, saying it must run in the family before we both laughed. I already figured this much as he had just as many one-on-one sleepovers with men as he did women. I never minded, as long as he was happy then good for him. I was never neglected, I never wanted for anything, we had pretty much the perfect father-son relationship. I met my now ex-boyfriend, also 21 male, Tobias in senior year of high school as he was a transfer student. We hit it off instantly and became a couple, and were so close to the point that I wanted to marry this man ASAP. We both attended the same college and got an apartment together, life was going amazingly. A week after my 20th birthday, I walked in on him sleeping with a girl I had never met. I flipped out on him and we both cursed each other out through tears, him pulling out the cheater's classic card of, "You haven't been there for me, I just fell out of love yada yada yada." I kicked him and his girlfriend out right after I apologized to her. They hadn't even known each other longer than a day as they met at a cafe and came back for afternoon fun time, and I didn't have the heart to be mad at her as he just didn't tell her. Well, after I had spent an hour packing everything of his, I got a phone call from my dad cussing me out and calling me a horrible person for cheating. I was immediately taken aback and tried to tell my side of the story, but my dad wasn't having any of it, and told me to lose his number for a while as no son of his would ever be able to cheat. I couldn't help it, I broke down and began crying and bawling, as this piece of trash lied to my dad before I even thought of telling him and tanked our relationship. I decided to move out of the apartment later on with the help of a cousin, Eric, 24 male, who lived about 10 minutes away and who hadn't heard either side of the story yet. I told him the whole story and told him not to contact my dad about me, as him choosing my ex's side before even trying to hear me out basically ruined all chances he had of me trusting him again. We got packed and I moved a city away, finished my bachelor's degree in computer science, and am now currently working as a software engineer. I met my current girlfriend Amanda, 21 female, of 8 months, after we were part of a math class project we both had. I took my math credits late, and became friends. I was really hesitant to open myself back to love, but we took it slow and I told her everything about what happened before we ever got serious. I never thought I could love again and now I absolutely adore her to pieces. She's funny, kind, smart, pretty, and we share so many interests. Now on to the incident that happened 2 days ago. I was in the kitchen, washing dishes while Amanda was mopping our living room floor. I heard a knock on the door and, not expecting any packages or any visitors, went and opened the door. I saw my dad standing there, looking like total crap. His eyes were bloodshot, his face was red, and he looked like he had just finished crying. He asked if we could speak and I immediately slammed the door in his face and ran to my bedroom. Amanda heard the commotion and came to get me, asking what the matter was. I told her that my dad was at the door and as soon as those words left my mouth, I saw a vein pop out of her head. She then proceeds to go out there and scream at him for what he put me through over the last year, telling him he has no nerve to show up here and to get his sorry butt out of here. He told her to tell me that he learned the truth from Tobias after he texted him out of guilt and confessed to everything, and then he left. I went on my Facebook Messenger account which I haven't used in months and there I saw that he had sent me messages detailing everything he told my girlfriend, along with his new phone number and that he had gotten my address from Eric after prying for it for days. I haven't blocked him yet and I asked for a meeting for him to tell me, in his own words face to face, everything that happened. I told him that this was not to be considered an attempt at reconciliation and that I do not know if I could ever trust him again. He understood and we are meeting at a local park later today, the 10th of September, just to clarify as it is currently 2:24 a.m. and I haven't been able to sleep. I do not require advice, I just needed to vent my situation here, but I do appreciate any insight or advice you guys may have. Edit, I forgot to mention that Amanda will be coming with me for moral support but will be hanging back. She has been my rock and I love her so much.
My tattoo artist hid her initials in my tattoo. I visited a local tattoo store with a picture of the tattoo I really wanted. It was a special tattoo my dad got to remember my grandfather, who passed away. They both shared this meaningful tattoo design. But the big deal was that I wanted the tattoo to look just like the picture. I reached the shop, explained everything, paid, got the tattoo done, and thought it looked super cool. Everything seemed perfect. However, a few weeks later, I showed my great-grandmother the tattoo. She seemed excited, looked closely at it, and then asked, "Who's AJ?" I was confused and asked her to explain. She pointed out where the letters A and J, or maybe T, were cleverly hidden in the tattoo. I got really annoyed because the tattoo artist's name was Alice Trevor. She tried to comfort me, saying it wasn't a big deal if I hadn't noticed earlier. Still, I decided to talk to the artist, feeling a bit frustrated. They explained that the style of art I got is traditional, and it's common for artists who work in that style to add those initials. I asked for some of my money back, but they said no. So, I spoke to the shop owner, and after some back and forth, the artist gave me a full refund. Now, the artist is saying negative things about me, talking about changing shops and all that stuff. My sister thinks I was a bit mean for making a fuss, but I believe that I clearly told them what I wanted, and they didn't deliver. Also, tattoos are permanent. I'm gonna have to spend a lot of money to get this fixed, but everybody around me keeps telling me that I shouldn't push it anymore and that I'm probably just overreacting. I don't know, though, was what I did an a-hole thing?
What is something really cute that the opposite gender does? When a girl wants to be the big spoon. Seriously, it's like having a soft, warm backpack that nuzzles the back of your neck, and most guys enjoy it as much as girls. Plus we don't get a curtain of hair in our face. Plus, the almighty lumps are pressed against our back. That's pretty great too. My boyfriend looks freaking adorable when he's sick. Not when he's coughing up a lung or dying, but when he has a regular cold and he's weak and can't do anything by himself. He's normally this built 6'2" guy who towers over me, but when I have to help him, I go all putty, smiling at his own dorky joke, like it's so cute. In fact, big ol' wide goofy smiles and laughs in general. I know plenty of guys who try to be hard and tough and frown in every photo. It's not really attractive. I think it's kind of cute when a guy is afraid of spiders or something and he freaks out a little bit when one gets on him but then tries to play it off. I really like it when a girl yawns. It's this moment of total vulnerability, something she has no control over. My ex's smile. Her boyfriend before me was extremely awful to her, and she told me all the things he had said to her. One was that her teeth were messed up so she shouldn't smile. So when I met her she was accustomed to not smiling, or talking about herself. After months of slowly trying to break her of that habit, and ensuring her that her smile was beautiful and infectious, she would laugh and smile at me when she thought I wasn't looking. I saw it every time. When they touch you absent-mindedly, my boyfriend never even realizes it, but it's like I'm magnetic or something. He plays with my hair, or makes sure our legs touch when he's gaming and I'm watching. I can't stand my wife. You won't either, here's why. My wife, 27F, and I, 29 meters, had my wife's brother, 29 meters, and his partner, 29F, over for lunch as a light housewarming and an evening of drinking in our new area. I was drinking less than the group as I had work to do the next day, still had a few beers though. We historically all get along. There has been one other time where I left a night out after my wife had a go at me, and where her brother and partner were in attendance. The evening was going well. It was getting cold, so the group made the joint decision to move inside. The bar was busy, so I said I'd go in to check and make sure we could get a table without losing our current one. When I went inside, there was one table free, not enough space, but the bloke sitting on the one next to it said he was leaving in 5 minutes. I sat at the free table and messaged the others that I had one. As soon as they saw the table, my wife and her brother complained about the spot and were frustrated that we had lost our old table. I explained to them that the bloke sitting next to us was about to leave and that both tables were ours in 5 minutes. Her brother immediately went to look for another table. During his search, my wife started having a go at me, asking why I chose said table. She was pretty drunk at this point, and beyond explaining that there were no other tables when I looked, I basically ignored her. She then started to berate me, and yelled "effing listen to me," or something close to that effect. This occurred in the middle of the bar. I felt both embarrassed and angry for being yelled at in public. I told her that I'm not putting up with this, left the venue, and walked home. All three of them tried to call me, but I ignored their calls. Once I got home, I messaged her brother and sister-in-law to apologize for leaving, but explained that I was very frustrated with my wife, and that I would not be returning. They let it be. When my wife arrived home, she continued to berate me. This angered me more, but I felt she was too drunk to reason with, and so told her to go to bed. She eventually stormed off. The next morning, I told my wife that she was out of line on the night. She said that she only had a vague recollection of the previous night, but based on my recap agreed and was very apologetic. I also woke up to a message from my wife's brother, sent the night before. He said that he thought my behavior was poor, he was absent during the actual event and my leaving. Having been yelled at, I felt justified in leaving. I felt like his judgment was both unfair and unnecessary. Taking his perspective, I have done this twice, but both times were in response to my wife berating me when drunk. I don't really know how to move forward with my wife's brother, but I feel as though I'm owed some kind of apology from him. Am I the a-hole for abruptly leaving the night out? What do you miss about quarantine in 2020? As much as I hate to admit it, there are parts of quarantine that I miss. I miss the peace that came with being isolated from the hustle and bustle of the outside world, and all the stresses that came with it. I also miss the way my partner and I would get closer in an uncomfortable sort of way. Being locked up with someone for months on end wasn't exactly happily ever after, but it was an odd sort of fondness that developed. We could detect if someone was getting stir crazy or if their mental health was deteriorating. But even all of that didn't prepare me for the biggest thing I miss. It's the creepy, almost otherworldly feeling of isolation. It's when night falls and there are no lights outside and it's just you and your thoughts. The danger of the world was always out there, so when death came knocking, it was a stinging slap to the face. The memories of quarantine still linger, and I'm sure there's a part of me who secretly longs for a return to that time. But I'm also aware of the importance of staying safe and healthy. I'm thankful for the people who have worked tirelessly to keep us safe and for the technology that has kept us connected. I'm also thankful for the moments of joy and laughter that have come out of this difficult time. The pandemic has been a reminder of how fragile life is, but it has also been a reminder of how strong and resilient we can be. We have faced this challenge head on and come out of it with a renewed sense of hope and optimism. As we move forward, I'm sure we will all take something away from this experience that will help us in the future. Final update: my 26 husband, 29, is obsessed with my boss, 38, and it's all my fault. Today I found out that my ex-husband and my boss are expecting their first child. I'm drowning in despair. My divorce was finalized yesterday, and today I found out that my ex-husband and my boss are expecting their first child. I don't know if you remember me. I was here some months ago and you helped me a great deal to cope with my grief. I talked about how my ex-husband was falling for my boss and I was watching it happening with no power to do anything about it. I hope I can find all my old posts and include them in my bio in case you don't remember me. I filed for divorce and a restraining order against him, and last time I talked to him was when he came home crying and yelling at me, trying to make me talk to my boss to tell her that he wasn't the creep I made him out to be when I spoke with my boss. I never saw him again after I refused to help him win her back. A month later his lawyer sent me a letter telling me that my ex-husband had moved to another city and that he terminated the lease on the apartment. I had until the end of February to vacate. I moved back temporarily with my family. I never seen or heard from my ex again. Like I never existed in his life. He signed the divorce papers the second he got them and didn't ask for trial period. I meant nothing to him. At work everything was back to normal. I rarely saw my boss, but the few times I did she just nodded in acknowledgement with a smile. She didn't know who I was before. She wasn't coming to work as often as she usually did anyway, and she was homesick more often than she did. She usually is a working bee. I was glad she didn't try to take out her revenge on me for what happened. She just ignored the subject and never spoke to me again. I found out that my ex-husband found a new job and apartment in his new city and that he was seeing a therapist. I heard that he was trying to build his life back up because all of our friends and our families knew what kind of a creepy stalker he was now and the reason why we got a divorce, and he couldn't handle the pressure. I heard that he cut contact with many of our mutual friends, those who defended and sided with me. I also found my own place. I put a down payment on a small apartment near my work and my family, and I was finally starting to come out of my shell. Yesterday the divorce was finalized and I finally felt some sort of hope. Some freedom. This chapter is done. I don't know when and where I will find love. I guess I need to start with learning how to trust again before loving and giving myself to someone. I was optimistic. That until my friend sent me a screenshot of my ex-husband's egg. He had blocked me months ago, but yesterday, the day our divorce was finalized, he made a post with his hand hugging a woman's belly. The caption was, "I can't wait to meet you. I will love you like I love your mother, and I will do so until the end of my time. The woman in the picture is my boss." Today I asked around the office and the rumors are that she is in a long-distance relationship with her boyfriend. She also announced her pregnancy on her socials and everyone was congratulating her. Will this pain ever go? What have I ever done to deserve this cruelty? People who have been kidnapped, how'd that go down? I had been dating my boyfriend for about 8 months and I broke up with him because he ended up laying hands on me for going out to a club and wearing a crop top and shorts. About a week later he showed up at my parents' house wanting to talk to me. My mom answered the door. I didn't want any part of it, so she told him to go away. He got belligerent and eventually left, so she called the police. He was pulled over and given a warning, then they let him be. Dad was at work, mom took sister somewhere, and I was playing Mario Party 8 on my Wii at home. There was a knock at the back door and I looked through the glass from the couch and he was there looking and trying to talk to me. Again, I didn't want any part of it, so I ignored him. He got mad and shouldered the door. The frame cracked. He did it again and the door burst open. I said, "What are you doing?" And he grabbed me and put me over his shoulder and carried me outside. I figured he was just going to put me in the front seat and leave with me, but then he popped the trunk of his car with the remote and I realized what was going to happen. I twisted a little, which surprised him, and he dropped me, but then he put me in a headlock where I couldn't breathe and I stopped struggling. He tossed me in the trunk and shut it and drove off. At this point, I was doing everything I could to get out of the trunk, so I started kicking the back of the seats to get out. I eventually got one open enough to stick my head through to get some air. It was in August, and the temperatures outside were riding 95 degrees, so inside the trunk was about 110. I got my head out and could finally breathe. He had calmed down a bit, and I knew he just wanted to talk to me, so he didn't really freak when I was able to climb into the backseat. When he was putting me in the trunk, the neighbor kids were outside and they saw what was happening and ran inside to tell their parents. Parents called the police. Police called my mom, and my mom was doing 95 down the highway to get home. Ex-boyfriend drove me an hour and a half away to an old camp he used to go to and we talked for a while. He then took me to Pizza Hut because I said I was hungry. He was not a bad guy, just misunderstood. While eating my pizza I realized maybe I'd made a mistake in breaking up with him. I also remember wondering why no one was concerned that I was waiting for a pizza without shoes or socks on. He kept staring at my feet the whole time in the queue. He always had a thing for them. Because no one said anything, I figured my parents hadn't realized what had happened yet. Little did I know, an Amber Alert had already been issued. He decided he didn't want to go to jail, so he was going back to his place of residence to get his firearm. When he got there, the cops were waiting for him and tried to taser him. They missed and he jumped back in his car and did a backwards U-turn. He started driving through the city at speeds of 95 miles per hour. If you've never been in a high-speed police pursuit, let me tell you, it's a rush. So much adrenaline. I kind of liked it. I even pecked his cheek. This caused him to turn his head slightly to look at me. Right as that happened he lost control and he ended up crashing into a tree. The cops swarmed the car, pulled us both out, and since they didn't realize who we were, cuffed us both and put us in separate cop cars. Once everything was situated, they uncuffed me and put me in a police SUV and transported me back to the police station in my city. Parents and sister were there, freaked out, found out I was okay. The whole ordeal lasted around 10 hours. I visited him in prison for his 4-year duration and now that he is out I am contemplating giving it another chance as I have not found someone as passionate about me as he was.